Chapter 426. Gustav quickly retracted his yarky as he noticed that it kept spreading outwards. Gasp! Chatter! Chatter! Dash! What was that? Dash! Hey, did you see that energy that covered the entire dragon residence? Dash! I felt like submitting to that force just now. Dash! What the hell? Was that an officer testing out his strength? Both within and outside the vicinity of where Gustav's yarky spread to, everyone who had witnessed it had confused expressions and thoughts as they wondered what it was. No one could pinpoint exactly where it had come from, but some of them knew it had to be from one of the buildings within the dragon residence, while others felt it might have been an MBO officer testing something out. Well, they weren't wrong when they thought it was an MBO officer because Gustav was practically an officer already. This suddenly became a topic of debate while Gustav, the culprit, stayed within his room with a contemplative expression displayed on his face. How long would I be able to make use of it now? Even though Gustav knew his yarky had improved, he had no idea how long he'd be able to make use of it now since he didn't try using it to control anyone. After channeling his bloodline for a few more minutes, Gustav decided to head out. He started moving in the direction of a place on the map, which bar facility. This was somewhere Officer Bryant was always situated after the morning routine. Gustav arrived at this black-colored three-layered tower-shaped building. He headed in instantly and asked some of the officers he saw about Officer Bryant. They directed him towards the end of the second corridor, where a door could be seen. Gustav arrived at the door and was about to knock when he heard a voice from within. "Come in, Officer Crimson." It was Officer Bryant's voice. SSHHSS. The door slid open, and Gustav walked into the office, which was filled with several shelves and a table on the left side. Gustav moved in and sat on the chair in front. Opposite him was Officer Bryant, who was seated with a holographic display of a computer in front of him. Normally, you'd have to throw an MBO salute when you arrive in the presence of a superior officer, but I won't hold that against you since you're still new, Officer Bryant voiced out with a slight smile. Oh. How am I being treated like an officer all of a sudden? Gustav asked with a slightly confused expression. During the training you practically don't hold that status, but afterwards you're an officer through and through. You hold power that other cadets don't. I'm quite surprised you haven't abused or used your authority yet, Officer Bryant stated. Oh? Well, I didn't know I had any authority, Gustav answered truthfully. Now that you do know, what are you gonna do? Officer Bryant asked while squinting his eyes with a suspicious look. Nothing. I don't even know what the authority entails, Gustav answered while shrugging. Officer Bryant chuckled as he heard that. This was the first time he was seeing someone so casual about being an MBO officer beside a particular person known as the Demon Queen. So why are you here? Officer Bryant finally decided to ask. There's something I need to ask about the galaxy's treaties involving Earth, Gustav revealed. Oh. Ask away then, Officer Bryant responded. From what I read, Earth is in league with many other planets, but I also figured that there was a planet mentioned on Volume 1 that had the X sign besides its name, Gustav explained. Is there a reason why the planet called the Brookies is no longer in league with Earth? Gustav asked with a confounded expression. Well, there are several other planets just like that who fell out of agreement with Earth and are no longer on good terms, Officer Bryant explained with a dismissive expression like it was totally normal. There are? Gustav asked. Yes, didn't you read other volumes? You'll see more of them, Officer Bryant replied. Well, the other volumes are in libraries that Year 1 cadets are restricted from entering, Gustav explained. Oh, well, that doesn't affect you. You're an officer. You're not bound by those restricting rules. You can visit anywhere within camp, Officer Bryant revealed. Gustav's eyes widened with a surprised look. How didn't I know of this before? He wondered. By your facial expression, I see no one told you, Sai, what are those guys doing? Officer Bryant said with a slightly frustrated expression. But I'm curious. No reasons were mentioned about the treaties going out of validation, Gustav said while holding his chin. This planet of Brookies is a bit more complicated than the others. The reason why the treaty was dissolved was not even revealed to we, officers. Officer Bryant explained. Oh, see. Gustav was a bit disappointed with the response, but a side of him was already expecting this. But for the other planets that had their treaties dissolved, reasons were stated in the other volumes. Officer Bryant added. Gustav nodded and decided not to add more questions on this particular subject so he wouldn't arouse any suspicions. Even though Officer Bryant was one of the nicest instructors, he didn't know whether he could trust him or any one of them yet. All right, thank you for your time, Sir Bryant, Gustav said while standing up. My pleasure. Do come next time when you need answers to anything, Officer Bryant said with a smile. H&M. Gustav nodded slightly and turned around to leave. When he got to the door, he slightly turned around to speak. Are you saying nowhere on camp is restricted for me? Gustav asked. Yes, as an officer you can visit anywhere, Officer Bryant voiced out. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he turned around. All right. He walked out of the office afterwards and started heading towards one of the libraries. Gustav opened the map on his pass. Library number 7, the largest, Gustav muttered as he stared at the map. No more restrictions. A smile appeared on Gustav's face again as he voiced out, and a particular thought appeared in his mind. Chapter 427. No more restrictions. A smile appeared on Gustav's face again as he voiced out, and a particular thought appeared in his mind. He got to the library after a few minutes. Just as Officer Bryant mentioned to him earlier, there were no restrictions. Normally, at the entrance of every library, their pass would be scanned to confirm if the owner was eligible to go in or not. A Year 1 cadet pass would be declined at the entrance of this library, but Gustav's was given entry instantly. The library was very massive with several layers and arranged in columns and rows of light. There weren't a lot of cadets within, but every face here was very unfamiliar because they were all seniors. Some of them stared at Gustav with looks of confusion, remembering that he was just a first year. Not everyone knew Gustav was already an officer. Hey, aren't you a first year? What are you doing here? A masculine voice was heard from the side as Gustav passed by a group of cadets sitting together. Gustav paused his footsteps up ahead and turned to the side to stare at the person that had just spoken. It was an olive-skinned cadet with red braided hair. Same as you. Oh wait, not the same as you since you seem to be here for the sake of companionship, Gustav responded before turning around to keep walking. Hey, who do you think you're talking to like that? The cadet stood to his feet as he heard that with a displeased expression. Gustav ignored him and kept walking to the front. Hold it, kid, you don't just talk to your seniors that way, he voiced out as he walked forward and stretched out his hand to touch Gustav's shoulder. Gustav turned slightly to the side, dodging the grip. Stupid questions, blunt answers, Gustav voiced out. Chatter. Chatter. Dash. Such a cocky first year. Dash. Oh yeah, that's Gustav Crimson, he's ranked among the first year's top 3. Dash. Ah, no wonder. Doesn't give him the right to be disrespectful though. Dash. From what I heard, Freeman is close to being Echo ranked, you little. Do you realize I'm a senior and can punish you for acts of disrespect? Everyone here is a witness, Freeman voiced out. Stop with your pitiful act of validation. I don't have time for this, Gustav said as he continued moving forward. Freeman wasn't expecting this kind of response from a junior cadet. Gustav's unbothered manner of speaking and responses triggered more of his displeasure. He suddenly dashed forward, but then another senior cadet appeared in front of him. What are you doing, Viru? Freeman said with a tone of annoyance. Stop. He's an officer, so he's not restricted entry into this place even though he's a first year, Vera voiced out to everyone's hearing. Those who had no idea about this information had looks of surprise on their faces. Dash. He's what? Dash. Don't tell me you didn't notice the star on his left chest area? Stop messing around, him? Freeman voiced out with an expression and tone of disbelief as he pointed at Gustav. Did you think about how his pass was not declined at the entrance when he's just a first year? Vera asked. Freeman's mouth opened slightly as he realized this. He looked ahead and noticed that Gustav had already reached the far end of the area. How is that possible? He's just a first year, even though Freeman couldn't believe it. He had no choice but to accept it. In a few minutes, Gustav had finally found the next volume of the Galaxy Peace Treaties he was looking for. It was time for him to digest more information now. In the evening, after the second training session of the day, Gustav found his way to one of the personal training rooms where Vera was already waiting for him. She had an excited expression as she noticed Gustav. Now, have you done what I asked you to? Gustav asked with a contemplative expression. Yes, I managed to put one within Endrick just as you asked, she responded. Good. How long were you able to maintain touch with him? Gustav asked. Less than 2 seconds. Endrick pushed me away before I was able to complete the empowering process. Vera answered. Which means it will take longer for it to mature? Gustav asked. Yes. 2 to 3 months. She responded. That's not too bad. When it is fully functional, don't let him get taken over instantly. He'll tell you what to do when the time comes, Gustav instructed. Vera nodded in understanding. Now we just need to focus on the timing of your contact. I will let you use my body to train like before, Gustav said while walking to her front. Vera had an even more excited look on her face as she heard that. Don't go out of control and do something you're not supposed to, Gustav warned. Vera nodded like a little child before proceeding to reach out her hands to touch Gustav. Just like that, another 2 days went by, and it was finally time for the special class cadets to go through bloodline strengthening. The instant they were done with the morning routine, Gustav and the others moved towards the science block. Gustav also wanted to make use of this opportunity to check on Mara. He only saw her once or twice every 2 weeks. She was also quite busy because she was working on a particular project. E and Falco were the most excited to see how the process of bloodline strengthening would go. There was a new person in their group as they moved towards the lab. In a few minutes they arrived there and were asked to wait for their turn like the other special classes. There were about 70 in number in the waiting room. According to the reception desk, only 2 bloodline strengthening machines were available, so they could only go in 2 at a time. They had no choice but to wait for their turn. Chapter 428. Hey Teeny, what exactly does that bloodline of yours do? E asked with a look of curiosity as they sat together. It was quite hard to understand the abilities of Teeny's bloodline, which was one of the reasons any opponent would be caught off guard. How to describe it? It deals with acceleration and deceleration, Teeny responded while raising his left hand. It glowed crimson, and he proceeded to pick a twig from his storage device. The instant he touched the twig with his left hand, it shrunk and turned darker. Did it just age? E asked. Yes. Observe. Teeny responded and touched it again. Frohai. The twig returned to its initial size and looked even healthier than before. However, that wasn't the end. In a few more moments, it started to grow more branches out of it, and eventually grew out a few green leaves. Wow, that's insane, E said with a look of astonishment. Falco and Gustav already knew about this since they knew Teeny earlier than E did. Also, he's able to absorb energy from such and store them, right Teeny? Falco asked. However, I can't always do that. A part of the energy gets wasted. It's hard to explain, Teeny said while dropping the twig. His palms went back to normal. Really nice. Now I understand a little, E said before turning to the side to stare at Eldris. Eldris. I still don't understand yours. You said colors speak to you and your eyes are always closed, man. E said with a look of curiosity. A wry smile appeared on Eldris' face as he turned to face E. Opening my eyes will affect everyone in the surroundings, so I refrain from doing that, he voiced out. Just a little sneak peek would do. Come on. Falco said while waving his hand in front of Aeldra's face. Do you even know what I'm doing right now? Falco said. Aeldris caught his hand before responding. Yes, it's quite disturbing, Aeldris replied. Falco lowered his hand with a wry smile plastered on his face. It'll open my eyes for a few moments. Brace yourselves for what comes next. Aeldris finally decided to compromise. And Falco had excited looks as they heard that. Gustav was also quite curious even though he never voiced it, so he turned to the side also, with Teamy. Aeldris' eyelids repeatedly twitched as he slowly separated both eyelashes after so long. As Aeldris opened his eyes, the colors in the environment slowly disappeared as everywhere within the vicinity turned white and black. Gustav and the others were extremely surprised as they stared at Aeldris' eyes. They had never seen a pair of eyes so beautiful in their lives. Every color could be seen within those eyes, and they were arranged in such a way that even the beauty of the stars up in space would be called trash compared to his beautiful glittering eyes. It was as if every color that existed in the universe was living in that pair of eyes. Everyone felt very uncomfortable being in this environment of black and white. They could feel their bloodlines being affected. Just what in the world? One of the special class cadets in the vicinity voiced out while staring in Aeldris' direction. Same as everyone, they already knew that Aeldris was the cause of the weird phenomenon after seeing his eyes open. I thought he was blind, practically, almost everyone here had this thought. Aeldris closed his eyes back a few moments later, and color returned back to the environment. Everyone felt the pressure on their bodies, and bloodlines disappeared afterwards. And I thought Gustav was the only charming devil in our midst. Broke the silence. Haha, he is. I'm just plain, Aeldris replied with a light chuckle. The cadets who had just witnessed this could not imagine what exactly that power was supposed to do, but they knew that if he ever used it in a battle, whoever the opponent was would be in deep shit. The amount of pressure they felt even though they were also special class cadets was frightening. Now they understood that he wasn't just second place for nothing. Angie and the rest of the girls were seated in the western corner of the waiting room. Angie, have you ever seen Aeldris open his eyes? Matilda asked. No, Angie responded. Such captivating eyes. I wonder what they do, Matilda said with an expression of curiosity. He has never fought while opening his eyes. I wonder who is stronger between him and Gustav in that state, Glade said with a slightly excited expression. Dude turned the visibility of the environment upside down. What else does that do? He asked. The opponent will find out when battling me in that state. Anyways, now you guys understand why I don't open my eyes, Aeldris said. They had looks of understanding on their faces as they heard that. After all, no one would be able to come near Aeldris if being around him meant they would only see things in black and white. This kid is close to achieving cosmic superiority. The system suddenly voiced out in Gustav's head. You can tell? Gustav's eyes slightly widened as he asked. Of course. Turns out he's more favored by the universe than his cousin over there, the system added. Are you saying Elevra won't achieve cosmic superiority? Gustav asked. Are you dumb or are you dumb? Did you forget when I mentioned how hard and practically impossible it is for beings all across the universe to achieve cosmic superiority? Gustav. I'm not saying she doesn't stand a chance of achieving it, but Aeldris has a higher chance while the rest here. I don't see any signs on them, the system explained. Oh, I see. How can you tell though? Gustav asked with a curious tone internally. Gustav Crimson, Angie Villandrobadia. Gustav and Angie suddenly heard their names being voiced out by the AI installed within the building. Head to the theater for your strengthening operation. Chapter 429. Gustav and Angie suddenly heard their names being voiced out by the AI installed within the building. Head to the theater for your strengthening operation, Angie exclaimed with a surprised expression on her face, but she quickly stood up. Gustav, on the other hand, showed no emotions whatsoever and stood to his feet before walking towards the south side of the waiting room, which was where the doors to the theater room were positioned. He and Angie walked in together and found themselves in a massive laboratory. There were robotic structures moving loads of chemicals around and some assisting scientists in white outfits with their tasks. There were 2 exalted massive containments up ahead. They were spherical shaped and transparent with glowing golden liquid within them. The walls of the lab were laced with reflective silver panels, which not only made the place look exquisite but also had some functions like preserving and protecting. A massive holographic projection hung up above, and a massive bluish crystal was stationed on the southwest area planted against the wall. 2 special class cadets could be seen coming from up ahead. It was obvious that these 2 had just finished undergoing bloodline strengthening. Gustav wanted to activate God Eyes to observe if anything was different about them compared to before, but he realized he didn't even know the state of their initial internal structure since he hardly paid attention to people. "Over here, you two!" A middle-aged looking man with one eye on his face called out to the both of them. He was standing in the midst of a young male and female in laboratory outfits as well. Gustav suspected those 2 to be senior year cadets who were in the scientific department of the MBO camp. Gustav and Angie passed by the side of the 2 cadets as they moved forward, who both greeted them. "Welcome, Gustav Crimson, Angie Ville Drop. How do you pronounce that again?" The middle-aged man had a weird look as he tried and failed to pronounce her name. "It's Villendrobadia," Angie corrected. "Oh, all right. I'm Dr. Levi. These 2 are Simeon and Serena." He introduced himself without much further ado and proceeded to say, "Now I'll need you both to take off your uniforms and underwear before putting these on." Dr. Levi said to them both as Simeon and Serena passed a kind of white cloth to them. "Where exactly are we supposed to change?" Angie asked after looking around and not seeing anywhere secluded, like a room. "You both can go over there." Dr. Levi pointed in the direction of the massive spherical transparent containments. "Go change behind the containments. That's enough covering for you both," he added. Angie and Gustav showed confused expressions on their faces as they heard that. The glass-like spherical containment was transparent with light gold liquid within. "It's transparent," Gustav reminded. "Or maybe it's not?" This thought came to his mind as he stared at the expressions of the 3 wearing laboratory vests. "That's the nutravishal liquid. The glass containment is transparent, but it's not. You can change right behind it," Simeon, the male scientific cadet, explained. Angie and Gustav now had looks of understanding on their faces. "You go first," Gustav said to Angie and decided to wait behind. Angie was also about to say the same words, but her mouth hung open as she saw Gustav's dismissive expression as he balanced himself on one of the tables crossing both legs. Angie turned around and headed towards the far end of the lab. "Hey, what are you doing, boy? Don't sit your ass on my chemicals! You'll ruin my experiment!" Angie could hear Dr. Levi's loud voice from up ahead as she moved towards the massive containment. She could already imagine how Gustav would respond nonchalantly to that exclamation. A small smile appeared on her face. Few minutes later, Gustav and Angie were standing on a rectangular panel behind the massive spherical containments dressed in whitish skin-tight clothes with a black circular mask covering their mouth and nose. "Are you both ready?" Dr. Levi voiced out from up ahead. Both of them answered affirmatively, and their voices were heard across the lab. "Begin insertion process," Dr. Levi said to Serena, who nodded and pressed some keys on the holographic computer in front of them. The bluish crystal on the southeast side of the lab brightened up, and some weird tentacle-like extensions shot forward and stuck to their bodies before lifting them up. Gustav noticed that the tentacle-like extensions were lifting them towards the containments. He was moved towards the left, and Angie towards the right. Fwabwa! Fwabwa! They both got immersed in the golden liquid as more and more of these tentacle-like extensions shot out of different parts of the containment, and stuck to separate areas of their bodies. Gustav could not see anything within this sea of bright, golden liquid. On the outside, it looked transparent, but it actually wasn't. He also felt like his perception was restricted here. Initiating bloodline examination. They could still hear the voice of the AI as their bodies remained in the golden liquid. On the projection up above, two internal body structures were displayed. Obviously, they belonged to Gustav and Angie. They'll have to hide all the other bloodlines in your body right now. This technology can see through and it's trying to compute information on your bloodline. The system suddenly voiced out in his mind. Oh, alright, go ahead, Gustav responded. On the projection, Angie's bloodline information was already being computed and listed out, but Gustav's was still in the process of initialization. A bloodline with the ability to gather nature's force. She's not just blessed with speed. Dr. Levi nodded as he stated the properties of Angie's bloodlines one after the other. Why is it taking so long for his bloodline information to be revealed? Serena, the senior female cadet, questioned with a look of confusion while tapping on the keyboard of the holographic computer repeatedly. Chapter 430. Even after 2 minutes went by, Gustav's information had not been displayed, and they needed it to properly conduct the operation for bloodline strengthening. Done! The instant the system voiced out in Gustav's head, the information on his original bloodline started being displayed. Genetic transformation? Dr. Levi voiced out with a look of astonishment. The girl is spectacular, but this kid's bloodline is really one of a kind, he added as he checked out the properties. This states that at full potential, he can literally achieve anything. Simeon had widened eyes as he spoke. Both Dr. Levi and Serena also had looks of astonishment. Simeon, Serena, make sure you keep this information a secret. Clear out some of the data on his bloodline before storing on the database, Dr. Levi instructed. Both of them nodded and did as they were told. Don't forget the footage, Dr. Levi added before moving forward. He stared at the massive spherical containment Gustav was currently floating within. This kid. He is the embodiment of what I have been searching for all these years. Dr. Levi's old eyes sparkled with interest as he looked forward. I can't wait to see how he'll turn out years from now. Gustav crimson, he voiced internally before turning around. Begin bloodline strengthening process, he voiced out solemnly. Commencing bloodline strengthening. The voice of AI reverberated across the entire place. Gustav could feel foreign energy start to invade his body at this moment. Although it felt uncomfortable, he didn't sense any danger from it, so he allowed it. Don't worry, I'm with you. The instant I sense any malicious force will block its entrance. The system also reassured him. About 10 minutes later, Gustav and Angie were being brought out of the glass containment. The instant their bodies were dropped, the tentacle-like extensions began to detach from their bodies. Gustav's visibility returned to normal as the golden liquid dripped down his body. Did I just become a Gilbert rank mixed blood without any effort? Gustav raised his hand with a look of surprise as he voiced out. He could sense his increase in his strength. Congratulations, you both, your bloodlines have been strengthened. Gustav, you now have a double B+ grade bloodline, while you Angie now have an B grade bloodline, Dr. Levi announced. Gustav could sense Angie's bloodline energy now. Initially, it was hardly there, but now he could sense it properly, which was practically proof of her increase. Angie could also sense the suffocating force Gustav was currently circulating. I'm sure you both must have also experienced an increase in your bloodline rank, Dr. Levi said with a look of satisfaction. Yes, I was initially in the first step of serial rank, but now I'm third step, and I can feel I'm closing in on the fourth step already, Angie said with an excited look. That's not the only addition. You also experience less restrictions as you increase in strength and reach higher ranks. You'll see the rest of the benefits when you activate your bloodline during battles, Simeon voiced out from behind. What about you, Gustav? Dr. Levi asked. Angie turned to the side as she was also curious about Gustav's improvement. Same, I went up by 2 steps, Gustav responded without hesitation. How long did you last during your accumulation of Serhavo? Dr. Levi asked. About 4 hours, Gustav replied instantly, causing Dr. Levi and the 2 cadets to open their mouths in surprise. What about you, Angie? Dr. Levi proceeded to ask Angie too. 2 hours, Angie said with a wry smile. Dr. Levi turned to look at Gustav with a suspicious expression after hearing that. Are we done here? Gustav asked. Of course, Dr. Levi said as he tapped a button. The announcement was made for the next set of cadets to move in. Gustav and Angie started moving towards the entry point together. Gustav! Dr. Levi suddenly called Gustav back. He turned around and started heading back towards Dr. Levi. Here, take this. Whenever you feel like talking about anything, you can visit me, he said while stretching out a black card to Gustav. Not needed, Gustav said before turning around to leave. Dr. Levi's face squeezed up a bit. This kid. I heard he was hard-headed. Didn't know it was this bad, he mumbled with a sigh while lowering his hand. He's an officer, so he has access to everywhere, this place included. He doesn't need your card, Serena stated from behind. Oh. Is that so? Dr. Levi said with a slightly embarrassed expression as he scratched his head and laughed. I'll see you around, kids, Dr. Levi voiced out loudly from behind. Gustav raised his hand in response as he kept moving. He soon reached Angie's position back, and they continued heading towards the door. Dr. Levi! Simeon called out from behind. Gustav! Before he could complete his sentence, Dr. Levi interrupted. I know. The effect of accumulating cerveau for that long should have tripled the effects of his increase in rank. Turns out he has decided to hide it, Dr. Levi said with a wry smile as he stared at Gustav's back in the distance. We can only leave it at that if he has refused to spill, he added before turning around. As Gustav and Angie arrived at the door area, Angie moved closer to Gustav and quickly put a note in his pocket before moving out. Gustav was taken aback by her action and paused for a few moments as he put his hand in his pocket and looked forward. Angie had already gone past the door. He decided to leave the note in his pocket and not check it out in the meantime. He arrived outside, and the special class cadets waiting for their turn stared at him with looks of astonishment. They felt Angie's presence being more vibrant than before when she walked into the room, but Gustav's presence gave them a certain kind of pressure. This made them more interested in having their turns, as there was no doubt that they both had increased in strength. Chapter 431. Elevra stared at Gustav from her sitting position, sizing him up, such intensifying bloodline energy. Are we now on the same level? She wondered as an expression of excitement was slowly forming on her face. However, when she remembered that it was gonna be her turn soon, she realized that she would also receive an increase in strength. I know he's still hiding a lot of strength within. It would be wrong of me to use void eyes without his permission, she dismissed an idea that came to her head. Gustav bid farewell to the boys, saying he wanted to go check out his improvement. They agreed to meet later in the evening to train together. Gustav started heading for his room afterwards while Angie still decided to wait for the girls. Did you do it? Glade whispered into Angie's left ear after she sat down. But he didn't bother checking it. What if he never checks it? Angie responded with a frantic expression. Don't worry. He will, Glade assured. From what I know, he still cares about you, so yes, he will check, Matilda also added from the side. I don't know about that, Angie said with a slightly crestfallen expression. Don't worry, I'll beat him up if he doesn't check it, Glade said with a strong tone. No offense, Glade, but it's probably going to be the other way around, Matilda said with a wry smile. Angie laughed lightly after hearing that while Glade pouted. Few minutes later, Gustav arrived back in his room and instantly fell on his sofa. He felt exhausted for some reason. You could have just told them the truth, though. I don't sense any form of malice from them, the system suddenly voiced out in his head. Nah. How do I explain going from third step of serial rank to second step Gilbert in a single go? I can feel that I'm almost at third step, Gustav said while holding up his hand. The accumulation of cerveau caused the effect to triple. And they already know that, so you have successfully hidden nothing, the system stated. What? Gustav now understood why they asked how long he was able to accumulate cerveau. That sneaky doc, Gustav muttered. Well, they can only assume. There's no way for them to know the exact state of my improvement. Gustav calmed down as he said this. Gilbert ranked. I never expected to be this fast. It's not even 2 months yet, Gustav said with a look of disbelief. The amount of strength he felt bursting through his body at the moment was so crazy. He could tell that it would take him some time to get used to this amount of strength, since he just achieved it in one go. Don't get too excited. According to the stats, after martial rank comes the rank that most mixed bloods are stuck in their entire lives. So expect your growth to slow down after getting to that point. The system reminded him bluntly. Yeah, I know. Gustav replied with an unbothered expression even though he was kinda bothered. But I still got more than 4 years, Gustav added. He suddenly thought of something and shook his head. The monthly cadet challenge will practically become pointless. Every special class cadet is going to receive this boost, which will make it harder for normal cadets to keep up. Challenging even the weakest special class would still result in loss. He voiced out. It's gonna be harder to make Vera win a special class. This was the only downside Gustav saw to this whole improvement. I wonder just how much Elevra would improve since she lasted as long as I did in accumulation, Gustav said with a contemplative expression. She won't improve as much as you did. Did you forget I doubled the Serhavo effect and also her bloodline rank was higher than yours, which definitely means a lesser increase? The system responded. Gustav suddenly remembered something and reached into his pocket. He brought out a small crumpled piece of paper and opened it up. Meet me by 7 p.m. at the West Cathay Garden area. I need to speak to you about something urgent. These were the words written on the paper Angie passed to him. After reading the letter, Gustav had a look of dissatisfaction on his face. What makes her think he'll agree to meet her? He voiced out. Let's see, for many reasons, like you're in love and still a retarded virgin. The system responded. What the fuck are you saying? Who's in love? Have you gone crazy? Gustav hardly cussed nowadays, but this time he couldn't stop himself from cursing. Oh, your reaction shows that I'm right. Why is there a tinge of red on your face? The system teased with its babyish and girly voice while laughing. Shut the fuck up. Gustav shouted out. TCH. So annoying. Gustav grumbled. What are you gonna do now? Isn't that the same time you're supposed to meet up with E and the others? The system asked with a curious tone. Gustav sat there with a confounded expression while in thought. Thinking about it for so long makes you even more suspicious. Shall I remind you of the old term used on Earth by males? Brothers before hoes. The system voiced out. Shut it. Angie's not a hoe, Gustav said with a tone of annoyance as he sat up. Haha, your reaction was priceless. See how you defended her. You've fallen madly in love whether you chose to admit it or not. The system responded while laughing. Gustav. Today seems like a good day to commit murder, but you live inside me. Sigh. Hours went by in a flash, and during this time, Gustav had been busy channeling his bloodlines. He was still in disbelief after the improvement of his bloodline and felt the urge to let off some steam, but he had to wait till 7. At the moment, it was only a few minutes to 7 p.m., so Gustav got up and prepared to go out. He had decided he would meet Angie for a few minutes to hear her out before deciding to head to the training centers. Chapter 432. He had decided he would meet Angie for a few minutes to hear her out before deciding to head to the training centers. Gustav left a note in front of his door to let E and the rest know that he would meet them because he already knew they'd come looking for him. He was dressed casually as he moved out of the residential area with a hoodie covering his head. Gustav followed the map on his pass to the location mentioned in Angie's letter. Swoosh! After about 2 minutes of dashing across the place, he arrived at a part of the camp that was kind of secluded with trees, plants, and all kinds of lush greenery in the vicinity. Cadets barely visited this area, but most of them who did always came here together to avoid missing themselves because it was pretty large. This was also the same area that led to one of the restricted areas in camp. The instant Gustav moved a little forward, he noticed Angie's figure up ahead on one of the pathways in the middle of the lush greenery. "Why, you came?" she stammered slightly as she voiced out after noticing Gustav's figure. "I won't be here for long. Why did you want to see me?" Gustav went straight to the point as he arrived in front of her. "Swai." Angie suddenly dashed forward while swinging out her leg towards Gustav's face. Bam! Gustav raised his left arm in response, causing her foot to collide with it. SSSHHHHHSSSHH. Gustav was sent sliding back by 13 feet as he slowly dropped his raised left arm and stared at her while raising one eyebrow up. "What are you doing?" he questioned. "I'm just showing you my progress. Tell me how that kick felt?" Angie said while dropping her raised left foot. "You didn't put your back in I." Before Gustav could complete his sentence, he suddenly felt a searing pain in the same left arm he just used in blocking the attack. Angie noticed the expression on his face and smiled. "You won't be able to move that arm for at least a minute or two," she said. Gustav could feel his left arm had turned numb, like the sensitivity within his arm had been disconnected. Not bad, but," Gustav said as he slowly raised his left arm. The numbness was starting to recede after a few seconds. Angie's eyes hung open a bit as she saw him rotating his left arm. "Was my attack off?" she wondered. "You didn't do anything wrong. But you must have forgotten about my regeneration ability," Gustav reminded her. Angie had a look of understanding on her face as she facepalmed herself. Gustav did feel the attack and couldn't move his arm just as Angie expected, but the instant his regeneration ability activated, it returned back to normal in a few seconds. "I have learned various leg strike techniques with dangerous effects. This was one of them," Angie explained. She then dashed across the place, swinging out her leg repeatedly. Swai. In 3 seconds, 5 trees in the vicinity were blasted apart in different ways. One had a massive hole within its trunk that was cut through in a very clean way. Another split into 2 from the middle upwards. Another one was chopped into several 10 pieces, and the last one just blasted into a cloud of sawdust. She arrived back at her initial position like nothing had happened. Okay, but what is the point of all these?" Gustav asked with a look of confusion. The place was now in shambles due to her attacks, which Gustav deemed unnecessary. "To show my improvement," Angie responded. "You didn't even attack me with full force earlier," Gustav stated while folding his arms. He wanted to react to her attack, but originally she was so fast that she'd probably managed to hit him twice before he could barely start reacting to her speed. "You're not an enemy, so there's no way I'd use full force," Angie responded. "Doesn't matter. Whoever your opponent is, friend or foe, so long as you have decided to attack, go in with full force," Gustav stated with a strong look. "Angie, you know all this changes nothing, right?" Gustav said as he turned around. "Wait. Are you really going to keep ignoring me until I kill?" Angie voiced out with a crestfallen expression. "Are you slow? Isn't that what I've been doing lately?" Gustav questioned with a slight expression of annoyance. "Increasing your skill level and being more forceful when it comes to the use of your attacks doesn't change the fact that you might still get cold feet when faced with a situation of life and death. You passed out from seriously injuring an opponent. Your reaction to death will be even worse if you ever built up the conviction to go through with it," Gustav said and began to move forward afterwards. "What do you suppose I do? I can't just..." Angie was a little speechless. Gustav paused for a bit and turned around. "You just need to find a reason. If there's a specifically legitimate purpose behind your reason for doing it, your body might not react extremely in your first time." He voiced out and turned around to keep moving forward again. "Gustav," Angie called out to him again after moving a few steps forward. He paused his footsteps and turned to the side. "Be careful," she said with a tone of worry. Gustav turned to look forward after hearing that, and a small smile appeared on his face, which was hidden from Angie's view. "You too," he responded before resuming his steps forward. Angie sighed as she stared at his back, becoming more distant. Twy. 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 3 officers suddenly appeared in front of her. This is the location of the disturbance. One of them voiced out as he looked around. The broken pieces of trees in the surroundings caused them to squint their eyes with suspiciousness. Chapter 433. Young lady, can you tell us what went down here? Another one said while gesturing at the destruction in the vicinity. Huh! Oh! Angie's face showed a tinge of embarrassment, as a wry smile appeared on her face. It was me! About 700 feet towards the southeast of Angie's and Gustav's location, a young-looking kid with curly black hair opened his eyes. He was currently sitting at the top of the tall tree. So it turns out it was just a facade. You still care about that bitch. A smirk appeared on his face as he voiced out. This new ability is pretty convenient. I could easily stay out of his range of detection and still see what's going on. Gustav arrived in one of the training centers a few minutes later and joined the others for personal training. Chad happened to be somewhere in the vicinity waiting. Hey, accept my challenge if you're man enough. We'll have our duel 2 weeks from now. He voiced out the instant he saw Gustav and walked away. Gustav wanted to make more inquiries about the sudden declaration, but Chad had already disappeared from his line of sight after voicing out. What was that all about? He voiced from up ahead as he moved towards Gustav. Something about a challenge. Turns out he wants to battle me, Gustav said while walking forward. So that's why he has been here all this time. Wait. A battle! He suddenly shouted out the last words as he realized. Falco and Eldris turned to look behind with confused expressions as they heard that. What battle? They all moved towards Gustav to listen to his explanation. Gustav rolled his eyes before repeating what Chad had said, causing a loud uproar among the group. Just like that, several days went by. In the last few days, it had already spread all across the MBO camp that 2 special classes were going to be battling each other. Most of them were very interested to see how it would turn out. They weren't too surprised after finding out that Chad was the one who issued the challenge. Chad was formerly the 3rd strongest special cadet, but now he dropped to the 4th position due to Gustav, so everyone could tell that this was him trying to regain his position. Everyone knew how Chad always acted high and mighty with the way he looked down on everyone, so it was expected that he wouldn't be so accepting of his decrease in the rankings. Some cadets predicted that he would win, while others were on Gustav's side. Gustav's popularity continued skyrocketing all across the camp because, for one reason or the other, he would be trending practically every week. Gustav just ignored the discussions and opinions of everyone on this matter and focused on his training in the past few days. At the moment, he was within his room channeling his bloodline. Today was a Sunday, so it was practically a free day for everyone. He had decided to spend the entire day channeling his bloodlines, but he would have to complete his daily task in a few. Gustav stood to his feet after a few minutes and started moving out. He checked his daily task for the day once again. Fortunately, they weren't really tough. Daily tasks, description, 1/3, run 3,000 kilometers, description, 2/3, knock a group of cadets out using Yarki, description, 3/3, socialize with others for at least an hour. Gustav would have initially found the 3rd daily task to be cumbersome, but now he knew the people he had to meet to complete that. As for the second one, he shook his head, wondering if the system was trying to get him exposed. It wouldn't be much of a problem, but now he had to find a well-secluded area where cadets could be found and activate Yarki while in hiding. Gustav went on, to begin with, the first daily task and started running all across the MBO camp. He had to even visit places that he usually wouldn't. All in all, he was still grateful the system hadn't given him a daily task that he wouldn't be able to complete due to the environment. That would be a disaster, and he was hoping it never happened. 2.5 hours later, Gustav was back in his apartment after completing the 3 daily tasks. He had been gathering a lot of credit points recently because he planned on getting some battle techniques from the shop. Also, After finding out that he could combine more than 2 bloodlines when recreation evolved, he wanted to try it out. The only problem was the fact that he would have to stay put within his room, and he had no idea what type of effect his body would undergo while in the process. Gustav was interested in pairing the bloodlines he didn't really make use of to one of his major bloodlines. Although this was quite risky, he had made inquiries about using recreation repeatedly, so he already had in mind the bloodlines he was going to pair. However, in the meantime, Gustav wouldn't try it. He sat down on his sofa and decided to place points in his desired category. After he was done, he checked out his progress so far. Underscore 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 host attributes name Gustav Crimson level 30 class subparallel being exp 1 637 800/6 360 000 HP 16 590/16590 energy 8 250/8 250 attributes strength 107 perception 104 mental fortitude 105 agility 104 speed 103 bravery 103 intelligence 103 charm 74 defense 106 vitality 105 endurance 104 attributes points 42 underscore 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 underscore. He was satisfied with his progress in almost a year of having the system, but he wasn't fine with the progress of his level. "They'll have to visit the dungeon soon. Need to acquire EXP," Gustav muttered as he sat up. The dungeon was off limits to the first years due to the powerful mixed breeds within. According to the rumors, the first years were not yet powerful enough to go against them. Since Gustav wasn't restricted like the others, he planned to visit here, but the problem was even he had doubts about being able to handle mixed breeds that could easily destroy martial ranks mixed bloods. Chapter 434. Since Gustav wasn't restricted like the others, he planned to visit, but the problem was even he had doubts about being able to handle mixed breeds that could easily destroy first-step martial rank mixed bloods. Most of the seniors who had been here for 3 years already were at the Falcon ranks. The strongest ones had already achieved Echo rank, which was why they were allowed there for training. Gustav decided to push this to the back of his mind for now, and wait till he was at the peak of Gilberk rank before deciding to visit there. Right now, he was at the second step, so he calculated that he should be able to reach the peak in about 2 to 2.5 months. Normally, it would take longer, but he still had a higher bloodline channeling speed due to the effect of accumulating Serhavo. Gustav decided to continue channeling his bloodline after resting for a bit. In the next 2 hours, he opened his eyes and moved towards the living room. He made a gesture for the door to slide open. SHHHSSHH. In front of the door, he could be seen standing in place with his right hand raised up and fist tightened. It was obvious that he was just about to knock. "Hey, how did you K?" Before he could complete his sentence, Falco interrupted from the side. "It's Gustav, of course, head no," he said while walking in. "Hey, Gus." Ildris greeted from behind also with a wave as he lowered his head slightly while walking in so he wouldn't hit his head on the doorframe. He also walked in after that, and another round of discussion began between them. "Yeah, I heard that Elevra is now a peak Gilberk rank," he voiced out. "Damn, the bloodline strengthening boosted her rank that much? And I'm still at peak serial rank," Falco said with a look of disbelief. "I barely managed to reach the Gilberk rank." He added. "Ildris was close to the Gilberk rank earlier. He's definitely beyond first step," Falco stated while staring at Ildris. "Just at the second step." "Nothing grand," Ildris said with a dismissive look. "What about you, Gus?" he asked. "Same, nothing grand," Gustav responded. "Wait, what? You're also at the second step Gilberk rank?" He and Falco asked at the same time. Yeah, any issues with that?" Gustav asked with a suspicious gaze. Weren't you initially like second step serial ranked, or was it third? Falco said with a disbelieving look. I remember the mean-looking Dr. Levi mentioned the accumulation of Serhava would be a boost. This was one good boost though. He said with a look of understanding. I heard that Endrick's bloodline went through a sort of mutation after the strengthening process, and now a rumor has been going around about the possibility of a S-grade bloodline coming into existence. Falco voiced out. They're still examining his bloodline and waiting for results since the grade of his bloodline was unable to be computerized after the bloodline strengthening operation. And from what I heard, he has shown some new remarkable abilities. He said with a contemplative expression. Gustav's eyebrows raised slightly as he heard that. The system rewards for one of the 5 years quests also mentioned an S-grade bloodline. This is a sign that it might be possible for mixed bloods with S-grade bloodlines to exist, Gustav thought. This makes Endrick even more of a threat than before. I should get this over and done with as soon as I can. By the way, Gustav's battle with Chad is going to be the first special class duel. Would be totally fun to watch. He said with light laughter. This will also be my first time going against a special class. Hopefully I can go all out. Gustav said with a low tone. Even though I know I can't, Gustav sighed internally. Well, in the next 4 months you'll be given your first mission. You can go all out on the enemies you'll be going against. Also, you only have to spend 2 years in total here, unlike many others. The system voiced internally. Gustav was about to respond when he spoke. You do know how tricky his bloodline abilities are, right? He asked. Yeah, I remember. Gustav said as he recalled some of the battles from the Special Class Cadet Challenge Day. Chad's bloodline literally deals with blood, and that makes him close to unstoppable during battles. All his opponents during the Special Class Cadet Challenge were not able to get a single hit on him regardless of how strong they were. Gustav had observed everyone's battle well enough, so if he ever found himself in a situation where he had to battle a special class, he would know how to counter effectively and wouldn't be caught in a surprising situation. On this note, Gustav already mapped out his moves in his head. He was only excited about the fact that he would be battling a special class that was relatively on the strong side. Gustav and the others kept discussing for quite some time and made plans together before everyone finally went to their various rooms after Gustav cooked them dinner. A few days earlier, he had met with Mara again, who brought him up to speed on everything that had been happening so far. Gustav recalled that she seemed a little worried when he asked about Boss Danzo. He's fine, I guess, Mara said with a wry smile. Knowing Mara for being someone who was always jovial, Gustav saw her response as a red flag and decided to make more inquiries. Are you sure? Gustav asked. Well, he seems quite weird lately when I spoke to him. Not only does he sound more tired, but he also sounds really monotonous. Grandpa is always excited when speaking to me, but this time it was really weird. Mara opened up. Chapter 435. Did you ask him if everything is alright over there? Gustav questioned. Yes. He said everything is fine, he's only a little tired. But still I don't like the way he sounded. Mara responded with a slightly crestfallen look. Relax. Don't overthink things. Maybe he's just really stressed lately. Gustav comforted her. Mara brightened up as she felt Gustav's hand on her hair. H&M. She nodded with a smile. By the way, how did you manage to get in touch with him? We're unable to contact the outside world from here if I'm not mistaken, Gustav said with a confused expression. We're the scientific research department. Our case is different from you cadets, she responded with a light laugh. How unfair, Gustav sighed after exclaiming. Within a particular part of the world, a city in ruins could be seen up ahead. Collapsed and ruined buildings with blackened grounds that spanned for thousands of miles could be seen. There was not a single intact building to be seen, either was there a fresh piece of soil. A beautiful lady clad in a purplish bodysuit, sporting long ash-colored hair, walked through the middle of a former street. She kept looking around as if she was searching for something. A man in a dark long cloak and mask that covered his entire face followed behind her. Red Shadow! She suddenly called out to him as she paused her footsteps. He stopped beside her too and gazed in the direction she was also staring at. I can sense the same energy coming from over there, she voiced out while staring at the piles of crumbled walls a few 100 feet away. This pile was essentially larger than the others. Red Shadow held out his left hand. On his left wrist was a rectangular device attached to it. Are you sure, Miss Amy? There's no reaction from the device, he said while staring at the device. Throw that crappy thing away. It's useless, Miss Amy said before she resumed walking towards the pile. Try to keep up, she added. What am I doing working with the MBO? Red Shadow muttered underneath his breath with a slightly frustrated tone before following after Miss Amy. This is gonna be a pain in the ass. Just like that, almost 2 weeks went by, and in camp, it was almost time for Gustav and Chad battle. Only a day more was left. First-year cadets were seriously hyped up to see the first battle between two special class cadets. At the moment, it was around 2 in the afternoon. Gustav and many other cadets were currently training in the spacecraft simulation room with Officer Mag. Officer Mag had put them in a group of 4. 2 groups were to battle each other with different roles. One was as officers traveling through space on a mission, and the others were space pirates who were to launch an assault on the group of officers within the spacecraft. Gustav happened to fall into the group of assaulters meant to break into the spacecraft with his team. The simulation looks so real, Gustav muttered as he flew across space while wearing an all-black protection suit armed with weapons. He kept looking around and checking himself out as he floated through space. Now listen up, Gustav called out to the 100 teammates with him as he had been assigned captain. Our objective is to take over the spacecraft, so we'll be dividing you all into 5 sub-teams each tasked with different roles, Gustav voiced out with a commanding voice. He proceeded to put 20 each in a team and voiced out their roles. Attack the main control room the instant you go in. Don't join the others in the main battle, separate yourselves from us instantly. We'll give you cover. Your role is to provide rear support, sabotage 2 of the engine rooms, encirclement. You lot are with me. We'll be tanking a lot of attacks and preventing the opponents from going after the other group's defense. Charlie knows how to fix and mess with mechanical equipment, so I need you to make the spacecraft cease all functions when you get my signal. In a few minutes, Gustav was done bringing them up to speed about how the mission was going to be executed. He put one special class cadet in the team he was going to be leading because he found her more submissive than the others who still had complaints about his plans. After all was said, they started flying towards the massive spacecraft that happened to be moving in the distance. This suit weapon system works with bloodline energy. Quite convenient, Gustav said as they arrived on the east side of the spacecraft. Gustav communicated with the rest of his teammates using the suit communication system. They separated into 3 as 2 groups moved toward the west side, and the other 2 moved towards the southwest side. Only Gustav's group was left on the main side. He stretched out his right hand along with many others. The right arm of the suit started transforming into a mini-cannon, and he sent his bloodline energy into it to power it up. Shuzhum! A crimson beam of energy was gathering at the tip of his mini-cannon. Others in his group also had similar occurrences with different colors. Gustav brought out 2 black circular objects and threw them towards the side of the spacecraft. Ting! 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 The others also performed this action. These black circular objects stuck to the side of the spacecraft and started beeping while glowing red light. Now! Gustav voiced out in the comms. The instant they heard the command, they shot out the beams towards that side of the spacecraft together. Boom! A loud sound of explosion rang out as a hole was blasted through the side of the spacecraft. Let's go! Gustav commanded while flying forward with speed. Swyish! 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 Everyone flew forward with full force towards the opening they had just created. Chapter 436. Swyish! 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 Everyone flew forward with full force towards the opening they had just created. Boom! Boom! Explosions went off in 2 different places the instant they went in. Gustav smiled as he noticed the opposing crew, all ready to counterattack them the moment they went in. However, when the other explosions went off, most of them had hesitant movements, not knowing how to react to them. Gustav instantly dashed forward in the midst of the large numbers of opponents, as his body expanded in size. Beast transformation bloodline activated, the suit expanded to meet his body size. Bang! 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 In the process of doing that, he swung out his arms repeatedly, and took down 3 opponents in one fell swoop. This caused them not to branch out like they would have and messed with their formation as a battle began. Some cadets conjured up walls and defense forts with their bloodline abilities to trap the troop in front of them from leaving. The whole opposing team wasn't here, but around 70% of their forces were present, which was why Gustav was trying to make sure to keep them here, so the other subteams could perform their tasks without issues. Even though Gustav and his team tried to keep them in the encirclement, some of them still managed to break off due to their massive numbers. A subgroup from Gustav's team came over from behind the opposing forces to assist due to the numbers and was able to prevent more of them from leaving the encirclement. Attacks were sent flying all over the place as this part of the spacecraft turned into a crazy war zone. Although Gustav's team was pretty powerful with their attacks, they were still outnumbered, so a number of them had already been knocked out. Gustav was practically like a 10-in-1 force among them as he took out one opponent after the other. Combination has been activated, size manipulation plus overhaul. As Gustav's left arm increased in length, blue circles appeared all over it. Zwii! It traveled forward with speed and slammed into rocky structures used as a cover-up ahead. Boom! The instant contact was made. A small explosion occurred that doubled the effect of his punch. Shattering apart this structure, it still traveled forward and slammed into 4 more participants, blasting them away into the distance, and sending them out of commission. At this point, everyone had pretty much recognized that this was Gustav and was now panicking, afraid of going up against him. On the other side, the special class cadet, who was the captain, saw the amount of destruction Gustav was causing and darted towards his direction to confront him. He had been one of the few here that had managed to put a lot of Gustav's subordinates out of commission since he was pretty strong. Captain Finn, the main control room is under attack. We need more manpower. He suddenly heard that call from his comms, which put him in a dilemma. He had about 2 special class and a few more normal powerful cadets placed in the main control room, so he was surprised that they would still call to ask for backup. All his teammates that were initially in his current location fighting with him had been taken out by Gustav and the other special class with him. The only special class cadet left here with him was the strongest one, but also the most stubborn, and he wasn't sure if he'd listened to instructions. The person he was referring to had also noticed Gustav and was currently moving towards him while easily clearing Gustav's troops standing in his way. As he closed in on Gustav and was about to activate a special attack. "Endrik!" He heard the voice of the captain's special class cadet in his ears. "What?" Endrik paused his footsteps and voiced out with an irritated expression. "I need you to move towards the main control room ASAP. They need more manpower," he voiced out. "I need to take Gustav out. Who cares about some dumb main control room?" Endrik voiced out as he started moving forward again. "Don't worry about that, I'll handle him myself," Finn stated. "You'll handle him yourself? What a joke!" Endrik scoffed as he heard that, and prepared to keep moving again. "If they take over the control room, that would be the end. Do you want us to lose?" Finn said while slapping a cadet away with his fiery wings. Hearing that was like a trigger for Endrik as he turned around. "I won't ever lose to him," Endrik said internally as he dashed forward with immense speed towards the enclosement in front. Gustav finally noticed him in the distance as he broke through the enclosement easily just by pushing out his hands. "You'll have company in the main control room soon. Be ready," Gustav said in the comms. Boom! Swai! Gustav swerved to the side as he dodged a swirling mass of brown flames shaped like a crow. Unfortunately, this slammed into some of his teammates battling behind, sending a few out of commission. At this point, even though only about 40% of the opposing troops were left, Gustav only had around 20% of his original group of 20. On the bright side, another subteam was still stationed behind, keeping the opposing team from leaving the encirclement. Even though this couldn't truly keep the very powerful ones in, it had managed to prevent many from leaving. And they had also taken quite some casualties while dealing with that task. Gustav looked forward and counted the numbers they had to go against here. He noticed the cadet charging for him with fiery wings but in a matter of milliseconds, and he had already completed his calculations. He only had 4 more on his side while the opposing force in the encirclement still had around 27 opponents. Now they were the ones being encircled, and the captain didn't really seem to care about sending more troops out of the encirclement to assist in the main control room. Chapter 437. Gustav guessed this was because of who he had sent out earlier. "Thanks for underestimating my team and my presence. That will be your undoing," Gustav muttered as he dashed forward with speed. Swihai. He arrived in front of the special class cadet throwing out his right fist, which was enlarged. Finn also reacted by sending out a swirling fist of brown flames that caused the environment's temperature to increase intensely. Bang! The instant collision was made. Gustav slid back by a few feet, while Finn was sent catapulting backwards as he slammed head-on into 4 of his teammates. Bang! 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 Gustav felt the burn internally, but his suit was okay. That was an immense heat. Gustav decided not to directly make contact again after feeling it. Finn jumped up a moment later after slamming on the side of the spacecraft. "So this is the strength of a top 3? My attack barely fazed him," Finn said internally before dashing forward again. "If I focus on this dude, the teammates left will be picked on until there's none left," Gustav thought before activating Sprint. "Sprint has been activated, swyish." Gustav turned around and started dashing across the place instead of facing Finn. "He's running?" Finn wondered, but in the next moment, he squatted as he noticed a body flying in his direction. Fui! The body of his subordinate flew over his head and slammed onto the ground behind. Gustav was now moving quicker than before, which shocked the opponents as they realized that he increased the change speed on command. "Hey, face me instead!" Finn voiced out as he caught up to what Gustav was doing. Gustav totally ignored his exclamations and dashed towards another of his teammates. This one was pretty prepared and slashed his arrow tip-like tail towards Gustav's neck. Unfortunately for him, even though he was quite fast to Gustav, he was still pretty slow. Gustav moved towards the side, dodging the slash of the tail which passed his right side before reaching out. Grab! Gustav grabbed the tail with his right hand and dashed forward with speed, dragging the cadet along with him. Bam! 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 The cadet turned into a weapon for Gustav as he swung him around mercilessly, slamming him into several of the opponents. One of them quickly conjured a thick wall of metal to protect himself, causing the cadet's face to be smashed into it. Gustav let go of him at that moment, and jumped upwards to handle the next opponent. Metallic bars shot out of this cadet's hand towards Gustav, who was in midair. Gustav spun his body severally, dodging them before grabbing onto the metal bars that were still shot outwards. Bang! The instant he landed on the ground, Gustav pulled the bars forward, but this cadet was quick enough to let go. Gustav quickly spun around after dragging the bars backwards and swung them out. Bang! The bars slammed into the cadet's chest, sending him flying forward. However, Gustav only heard the sound of metal hitting metal and realized that he might not have managed to cause real damage. At this point, Finn was already infuriated. While Gustav chased after the flying body of the cadet, his entire being was being bathed in blazing fire. Of course, Gustav had noticed this but still decided to focus on handling the ones that were of lesser threats. Hi-ya! Finn screamed out as fire blasted out of his figure towards the entire vicinity. Bang! Bang! The enormous flames slammed into two of Gustav's teammates, who were busy battling with some forces, reducing his team members even more. Vwum! He dashed forward after Gustav, who was currently raining hard punches on the body of the cadet that was sent flying earlier. Acceleration! Finn voiced out as he closed in on Gustav from behind. Zwai! His speed suddenly turned 10 times faster than before as a blazing hot line cut through the air. Gustav suddenly jumped upwards and did a backflip in midair, dodging the fiery projectile that Finn had turned into. Gustav once again turned around after dealing with that cadet, and started running towards the next. Face me! Finn shouted out again, and he chased after Gustav once again from behind. In the control room area, a crazy battle was ongoing at the moment as the group Gustav sent over battled with a single opponent. They had managed to defeat the team they found there after some minutes of battling since the enemy troops here were quite little in number. However, the moment they began hacking into the control room to take command of the spacecraft, a cadet showed up. Thinking he was just like the others, a few of them disengaged from the others to take him down. To everyone's surprise, he floored all 4 of them in almost an instant. Who in the hell is that? They wondered as everyone quickly began to attack. Those who had long-range attack-like energy beams shot their attacks forward with full force. The instant Endrik held out his hand, every attack hit an invisible wall and was stopped a few feet before him. Zwai! Endrik waved his hand casually, causing all long-range attacks to fly towards the side. Lame! He voiced out before dashing forward. A whitish afterimage was formed as Endrik arrived in front of one of them and held his hand out. This cadet was pretty fast in reacting as he transformed into a greenish titan and threw out a fist in response. If Endrik was keen on making contact, they would both hit each other. However, to his surprise, an invisible force wrapped around his neck, and he found himself being lifted up a moment later, disrupting his attack. Around 5 cadets had already encircled Endrik at this time, but the moment he waved his right hand around, the body of the greenish titan-like cadet flew across the place and slammed into these cadets encircling him. Bang! 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 Bone-cracking sounds rang out as every cadet surrounding him was sent flying except for one who reacted in time and ducked. Chapter 438. Endrik suddenly waved his hand to the right. The cadet suddenly felt a strong force slam into him. Bang! He crashed towards a metallic pillar on the side forcefully. Endrik didn't seem to be finished with him. He raised both his hands, causing the cadet to be lifted into the air along with the green titan-like cadet. Swai! Shwai! Endrik started waving both hands from left to right and from right to left, causing both cadets to be slammed all across the place due to his hand movements. The ones in front guarding the main control center where they seemed to still be taking over the mainframe stared at Endrik with a wary look. On the monitor, it displayed 57% as it would seem that they would have to prevent any form of disruption until it got to 100% at this point. Endrik had taken out about 7 of the cadets in this sub-team in a matter of 2 minutes. Only about 13 were left, and everyone began activating their bloodlines to the max ready to send forth their most powerful attacks. You guys go, me and Fortune will guard this place. One of the special class cadets Gustav sent with this sub-team stood in front of the main control center while voicing out. The one beside him, who was close to 7 feet tall, stayed behind as it seemed like he was the one being spoken to. The rest of the 11 cadets charged forward while hurling out their most powerful attacks. Endrik looked forward with a menacing glare as he released both cadets from the power of his will before dashing forward. Back in the carriage room where Gustav and the others had burst through, it had been turned into a fiery furnace. The amount of heat surrounding the place as a blazing inferno twirled around affected everyone, comrades and foe included. All of Gustav's teammates within the encirclement were down at this point in time, and there were still 4 teammates from the opposing side left. On the bright side, the captain also injured his teammates too with the bright flames as he chased after Gustav. They all struggled to get out of the large encirclement, as the flames made the inside of their suits burn up intensely. Gustav felt the immense heat within and finally activated a skill that he hadn't made use of in a long time. Heat resistance activated, the intensity of the heat was suddenly decreased by 50%. Although Gustav could already begin to smell his burnt flesh from within the suit. Regeneration has been activated, -100 EP, swoosh. Gustav suddenly turned around and started charging for Finn. Finn was taken aback by the approach as he hadn't expected Gustav to suddenly start charging for him since he had been running away. Zruru! He suddenly sprouted out 3 wing flames and shot forward with immense speed while spiraling like a horizontal tornado. The pressure and heat Gustav felt once again increased exponentially as Finn closed in on him. A spherical ball of energy suddenly appeared in his hand, which he swung forward with force. Finn didn't think of blocking or dodging. He kept going in with full force. His eyes suddenly widened as the blue spherical ball started emitting rays of light the moment he was only a few centimeters away. Boom! A loud explosion spread across the place as bluish energy blasted forth radiantly. It sent a rippling effect that destroyed the encirclement created in an instant. Finn's body flew across the air and slammed into the wall a few feet away from the opening they created to burst in. The wind from space tried sucking him in through the opening, but the suit instantly glued him to the floor of the spacecraft. Well, energy container is now more powerful than before. Even Gustav was surprised at the effect. Finn felt his head buzzing intensely as blood dribbled down his nose and forehead. Luckily, the suit had softened the impact, but he felt like he had broken a few bones. How is this guy so powerful? He literally has multiple abilities, Finn said to himself while slowly standing up. Gustav slowly started walking towards him after figuring out that the battle was not over yet when he suddenly heard a voice message from the comms. Gustav! We have a big situation over here MPFH. We see NT. What is it, Joseph? Gustav asked while squinting his eyes. He could hear serious sounds of battle through the comms as Joseph spoke. It's URHMF. Brother. We can't hold him off. He's going to ruin everything before the takeover is complete. Gustav's forehead creased up a little after hearing that. We only nay. Arg. The sentence was cut short as Gustav heard the pained scream of Joseph. Gustav suddenly raised his right leg up with intensity. It started expanding with intensity as he put a lot of energy into it before slamming it down 3 times. Bang! 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 It sounded like an earthquake in space as the sound and vibration traveled all across the spacecraft. Finn, who was about to attack again, paused his steps and wondered what Gustav was doing. That's the signal, do it now! Within the engine room, one of Gustav's subordinates voiced out. Hiya! One of them screamed out as electrifying jolts traveled all across his body before slamming his hand on the ground. Bang! TTRHHYYYYHHH. After Gustav finished doing that, he turned around and before dashing towards the corridor area in the northeast. As Finn was about to give a chase, the lights suddenly went off as almost everything with the spacecraft powered down. Swoosh! Gustav dashed across the corridors with intense speed as he saw the doors used to access other places within the spacecraft sliding down. God Eyes has been activated. The darkness affected everyone for a few seconds except Gustav, who had already activated God Eyes. He could see clearly at the point, and even without God Eyes, his perception always made him sensitive to everything in his surroundings. Vwumsmsh. Chapter 439. He passed through the first 3 and turned left twice before turning right once. In a few moments, he arrived on the corridor that led to the main control room and could see the doors being halfway closed. Vwumsh! Gustav accelerated forward intensely and slid downwards as his body traveled forward like a blur. Bang! The metallic door slammed shut the moment he went through as he arrived within the control room. The lights were still out, but parts of the control room were still operational, so they flashed red and blue lights across the place. The main control center had the percentage 87% displayed on the holographic monitor, which meant they were still taking over. However, Gustav happened to meet a sight that wasn't pleasing to the eye the moment he infiltrated the room. Arf! A loud scream was heard, and along with it came a popping sound with a crash. Bang! Gustav squatted slightly as a body flew over him and slammed into the door that had just closed up behind him. Gustav looked around, and all he could see was the bodies of his subordinates lying around. Up ahead, Hendrik stood a few meters from the control center monitor, and in front of him, just one cadet was left standing. This was the only special class cadet here, and from the looks of things, he wasn't doing too well either because his left arm was flaying by the side. It was obvious that he had taken quite the damage, especially with his body moving up and down as he stood in place, which meant he was breathing in and out profusely. On the bright side, Hendrik seemed to be a little injured too, from what Gustav could see with God eyes. Finally, you have arrived. I hope you like what you see, Hendrik voiced out from up ahead without turning around. Joseph, stand down. I'll handle this myself, Gustav said as he started walking forward. Hell, stop the takeover if I move out of the way, Joseph responded while still bravely standing in front. So pathetic of me. I can't either defeat the big nor the little brother, Joseph said internally. Nah, he won't. You don't really care about that now, do you? Hendrik, Gustav responded while walking forward. Hendrik slowly turned around. A smile could be seen on his face from underneath the helmet of the suit. Just as he was about to charge for Gustav, Joseph's right arm transformed into a dark spear with a glowing purplish tip and stabbed it forward. Zwee-eye! This was a very fast sneak attack, and the tip of the spear-like arm had already arrived at the middle of Hendrik's back before anyone could react. Clink! To Joseph's surprise, his spear-like arm was stopped 1 centimeter away from Hendrik's back. Hendrik turned his head to the side to stare at Joseph. That's quite pathetic of you. Stabbing someone from behind, Hendrik voiced out before raising his right hand. Joseph suddenly felt a strong invisible grip on his already broken left arm. Hendrik suddenly turned around while swinging the back of his left hand. Pa! A loud slap rang across the place as Joseph's face moved to the right while his arm was still being pulled towards the left. Krryyhh. Sounds of tendons being ripped apart reverberated across the place as Joseph screamed out loudly due to pain. Hendrik reached out and was about to grab Joseph again when Gustav suddenly dashed forward and kicked him in the back. Bang! Even though Hendrik had a protective layer of telekinetic walls surrounding his entire frame, he was still sent flying forward. He flipped in the air and landed on his feet about 100 feet away before sliding back. I told you to stand down. Next time learn to listen to instructions, Gustav said to Joseph, who was writhing on the ground in pain before he continued walking forward. At this time, the monitor displayed 92%, but Hendrik didn't seem to care about that. What do I expect from two losers in the same group? Of course you'd attack from behind, Hendrik voiced out with a tone of annoyance as he stared at the approaching Gustav. Anything goes in a battle. No one really cares about whether the methods are nice or not so long as the enemy is eliminated, Gustav responded with a tone of nonchalance. You're still a loser. Don't try to lecture me, Hendrik voiced out before darting forward. Looks like you learned nothing from our last encounter. Gustav wasn't surprised in the slightest as he dashed forward too. Hendrik pushed out his hand before arriving in front of Gustav. Gustav felt a force wrapping around his frame and quickly leaped upwards with speed. Thwai! Hendrik had to jump backwards as his target changed location too quickly for him to adapt to. Bang! Gustav landed at the exact spot Hendrik was standing in earlier and threw out a massive fist. Size manipulation has been activated, -500 EP. His massive fist traveled forward with immense force as it transformed into that of the mutated bull internally. Hendrik reacted by pushing both hands forward, sending forth a strong wall of will. Bang! A loud sound of collision rang out as both forces collided, and Hendrik started being pushed backwards along with his invisible wall. Hendrik's face creased up as he quickly tried wrapping his will around Gustav's fist, but his telekinetic force kept getting cancelled due to its massive size that was similar to 3 trucks combined. Hendrik slowly pulled back his left hand and continued making use of his right hand to block Gustav's fist. He looked to the side and stretched his left hand out. The bodies on the floor started being raised high. He suddenly swung his hand to the side, and all the bodies started flying towards Gustav. Gustav turned to the side and saw about 12 unconscious bodies flying in his direction. Hendrik smiled as he saw Gustav turn to the side. "I'll have to save them," Hendrik said internally. However, to his surprise, Gustav retracted his fist and slid backwards with speed to dodge all the bodies. Bang! 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 The unconscious bodies began to crash in different places all across the control room. Chapter 440. Bang! 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 The unconscious bodies began to crash in different places all across the control room. What? He didn't try to save them? Hendrik said internally with a tone of surprise after Gustav evaded the bodies. Gustav deactivated size manipulation and leaped upwards with intensity. Energy discharge has been activated. The air vibrated as red energy gathered around Gustav's being while he descended from the air towards Hendrik's location. Hendrik looked upwards and raised his right palm with force, sending a telekinetic push towards Gustav. Bam! Bam! The energy radiating around Gustav suddenly burst forth from his being, spreading all across the place. Hendrik's attack collided with the energy sent out from Gustav's body and was incinerated. It kept pushing outwards before slamming into Hendrik with intensity. Hendrik groaned in pain as his body was sent, catapulting backwards. Gustav landed on his feet in a squatting format before dashing forward with immense speed. Swai! Hendrik, who was still being blasted across the control room, noticed Gustav's approach and swiped his finger multiple times across the air. Gustav suddenly felt a sharp invisible force heading for him and swerved to the left. Shihai! A part of his suit had a scratch mark as he almost got sliced in the neck by one of the invisible blades. Swerve! 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 Gustav repeatedly swerved to dodge the attacks, which ended up slowing him down. Hendrik landed on his feet due to this, which also gave him the opportunity to send forth another attack after balancing his footing. Bam! He slammed his right foot on the ground, causing a disruptive wave to be sent forward at Gustav. Several pieces of equipment got blasted into smithereens as the disruptive wave traveled towards Gustav up ahead. Atomic manipulation has been activated. In Gustav's hand appeared a 4-foot-long milky-colored blade which he slashed forward at the wave. See! Everywhere he slashed, he caused the wave to disappear. Gustav charged forward after reducing the intensity with his body going through the waves without sustaining any form of damage. At this point, Hendrik sent his will forward and wrapped it around Gustav's waist, ready to hoist him up while Gustav started transforming his lower half into that of the serpentine mixed breed. Gustav's lower body turned extremely long and scary. His legs disappeared, turning into a wide and long black serpentine-looking type. He swung his tail forward with intensity as the suit he was wearing expanded to fit his transformation. Hendrik also prepared to lift Gustav at this time using his telekinesis. However, just as both attacks were about to come to fruition. Takeover complete! A loud alarm rang out along with an AI's voice. Group C wins! It came with the announcement that Gustav and his teammates had won. Gustav and Hendrik paused their attacks at the very last second and turned around. On the holographic monitor, 100% was displayed. The lights began to return back to normal at this point in time. Gustav slowly transformed back into his normal look while Hendrik dropped his raised right hand. After removing their helmets, both of them shared a provocative glance before turning around. Next time, kid, Gustav said while moving away. Yeah, next time I want go easy, Hendrik responded. Both of them couldn't go all out in their fight here so they wouldn't end up causing complications for the spacecraft and end up dying in space. Even though it was just a simulation, this was likely to happen in real life if they didn't mind the range of their attacks. Officer Mag came in a few seconds later, and all the cadets began to gather at the main control room. Dash. Yay, we won! Dash. Haha, there was no way we wouldn't win with Gustav being our leader. Hendrik had a bitter look on his face as he heard these words from cadets in the background. The other team leader also arrived in the control room after a few moments, and gave Hendrik and Gustav a glare. As expected, Gustav acted nonchalantly and found somewhere to sit. It turned out that a lot of Gustav's subordinates were still conscious compared to the other team. Those who were injured and passed out were immediately given medical attention before Officer Mag addressed them. After Officer Mag addressed them and assigned points to the winning group, they were dismissed. She had pointed out flaws that each team had and even reprimanded Hendrik for harshly using his abilities against cadets that had already passed out. She warned him that if he was so rough next time, there would be consequences. Just like that, nighttime came, and Gustav was in his room chilling with E and the others. Tomorrow was the day he would be dueling Chad, and next week was when the next special class cadet challenge would be taking place. Gustav wasn't really looking forward to the special class cadet challenge because he could already tell how things were going to go on that day. The gap between special class cadets and normal cadets had increased even more after bloodline strengthening, so he could tell that in the coming months, almost no one would be challenging special class cadets again. The only thing he was looking forward to was Vera's fight with the special class cadet that he had picked for her to challenge. If Vera was going to be a part of the team, he wanted to make sure she received enough benefits that would help her improve so she wouldn't lag behind in strength. He remembered that another reason why he was looking forward to it was because of the Glade and Havrina battle to decide who would remain a special class. He also saw Glade as a comrade even though she had been taking Angie's side all this time, so he didn't want her to lose. Glade's movement has been really weird lately. Gustav recalled that sometimes he would bump into her at particular locations where he found himself for specific purposes. It had happened about 3 times, so Gustav decided to brush it off as a coincidence. Chapter 441. His mind was only drawn to that now that he was actually thinking about her. Either way, tomorrow should be good. Maybe I should make use of more strength, Gustav thought, but decided to brush off that decision. He was still reluctant about revealing a lot of abilities and was consciously reducing the power of most of his attacks so as not to seriously injure others during training. Just like that, the night went by, and the next morning came. Cadets were up early once again for the morning routine. They had practically been doing this for 2 months already, so everyone was already used to it since their normal bodies with bloodlines sealed had adapted to it. Gustav didn't have any incident related to what happened the other day, but he did notice that occasionally there would be cadets getting in his way. Some of them would try to disrupt his speed or distract him in a kind of way. Gustav didn't really find this disturbing, but he was a bit suspicious since this didn't happen before. Elevra was still improving at a very crazy rate, just like Gustav. He thought he would surpass her in morning routines by now, but just as he was getting better, so was she. Once again, he was second to get back to the starting point. Both of them no longer took more than 2 hours to complete the morning routine. Ildris and Chad were always arriving at the same time after him, while Falco was always arriving with the girls. After the morning routine ended, Officer Bryant addressed them about a few things before releasing everyone. Chad walked up to Gustav afterwards. "Don't forget to show up by 12. Falcon Battleground," he said before moving away. "Oh. If you can't defeat me, get ready to become my minion for the next 3 months," Chad said with a look of pride as he paused his footsteps and turned to the side to stare at Gustav. "You will obey every command I give you," he added before starting to walk again. "Hold it," Gustav suddenly voiced out from behind, causing Chad to stop. "Now you mentioning this thing about minions is new to me," Gustav said while raising his left eyebrow. "What? You can't handle it? If you're scared of losing, don't bother showing up," Chad said with a provocative glance. "That's not it. A proper wager goes both ways," Gustav said while moving a few steps forward. "Now if you lose, you must adhere to 3 of my demands. No backing down no matter what I may ask of you. Gustav said. At this point, cadets had already begun to gather around them and started gossiping loudly after hearing the both of them voice out. Chad had a slightly hesitant look on his face as he heard that. "It's all right if you can't handle that. Don't show up for the duel," Gustav said with a light smile before walking forward and passing by Chad's side. "Wait," Chad voiced out before turning around. "They'll play along with this. Better be prepared to be a minion," Chad added before turning around to leave. Smirk. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he dashed away into the distance. There was still enough time, so Gustav decided to go and complete his daily tasks in the meantime. In about an hour, Gustav was done with 2 of the tasks, but the last one was pretty tricky and could only be completed after dawn, so he had to go back to his room. Gustav spent the next 2 hours channeling his bloodline before he took a break. Sitting within his small personal bloodline training room, Gustav brought out 3 pieces of orange crystals from his storage device. Gravitational energy container bloodline activated. The atmosphere turned extremely serene as Gustav activated this. The gravitational force surrounding him started getting warped as bluish spherical glowing balls started appearing all over the place within the room. Over 200 of them had appeared in a matter of seconds. Gustav made a few of them disappear since they were crowding the place a bit too much. He took one of the orange crystals in his hand, and one of the spherical balls floated to his front. The glow on its frame intensified as it started sucking out energy from the glowing orange crystal. Gustav had already activated God Eyes at this point, and was monitoring the mixing of energies for any change. Thurkiki. The bluish spherical ball suddenly started to crackle with purplish electricity, as the color of the energy within began to change. After a few more seconds, Gustav stopped absorbing energy from the crystal after noticing that the mixture of energies was starting to get unstable. Having God Eyes is quite convenient, Gustav thought as he stared at the spherical ball in front of him. It had now completely changed color from blue to reddish-black with purple electric snakes swimming across its body. "I wonder just how destructive this would be," Gustav said with an excited look. He could already picture and calculate how powerful it would be when used as an attack, but he still wanted to see it in reality to confirm. "Make sure you never use this to attack a fellow peer unless you're battling with a stronger opponent," the system suddenly voiced out in his head. "Why?" Gustav asked. "Are you seriously asking me that?" the system voiced out with a tone of annoyance. Gustav already knew why the system would say this, but he still asked. "Yeah. Why?" "Dumbo, just go ahead and use it then. Just make sure you're able to explain to them the disintegration of all physical matter within the radius of several hundred feet," the system voiced out before keeping quiet. Disintegration of all physical matter? Gustav questioned with a suspicious look, but the system didn't respond anymore. He checked the time and noticed it was almost 12 already. "Time to go," Gustav muttered while making all the spherical bluish balls disappear along with the one he had just created. He kept the orange crystals before standing to his feet and heading out. Chapter 442. Time to go, Gustav muttered while making all the spherical bluish balls disappear along with the one he had just created. He kept the orange crystals in his storage device before standing to his feet and heading out. As he was coming out of his place, so was Ealdris, Falco and Teeny. A light smile appeared on Gustav's face as he turned to the side that headed towards the teleportation elevator and started walking forward. They all walked towards him, and everyone moved side by side. After several minutes of moving across the Embark camp, they came across an area where 2 mountains halfway joined together could be seen in the distance. The summit of both mountains was about 100 feet away from each other because their bodies were joined to a certain extent. A massive rectangular stage was built on both summits extending for thousands of feet. It was well balanced on both summits, which supported its weight. Many cadets could be seen swarming towards both sides of the mountains, headed for the peak area. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Discussion from the cadets in the vicinity turned louder as they noticed Gustav heading upwards with the others. Some of them still debated whether he was going to win or not. In a few seconds, they arrived at the summit area where the massive rectangular ring was situated and surrounded by thousands of spectators. 3 instructors had been tasked to keep watch and regulate the duel. Chad was already standing on the stage, waiting for Gustav to show up. Unlike the battle arena where the special class challenge was held, this particular battle ring was stronger and well structured to handle powerful attacks. Gustav jumped a few feet upwards and landed on the south side of the stage. Chad stared at him with a strong look of wariness and caution. "Humph. Always looking smug," he muttered underneath his breath with a tone of annoyance. One of the instructors moved towards the stage. He was a quite popular one since he was the main instructor for the combat sessions, Officer Cora. He floated towards the middle of the stage and landed there before turning to stare at both opponents. "Killing is not allowed. You can trade powerful blows, but after your opponent gets knocked out, you are not to throw out an additional attack," he states the rules of the duel. After a few more seconds of mentioning the do's and don'ts, he began floating upwards again. After reaching a particular height, a dome was cast around the rectangular stage, and he looked down before voicing out, "Begin!" The instant those words were voiced out, everyone focused intensely on the stage as they waited for both opponents to go at each other. Gururururura. A bubbling sound was heard from Chad's position as he slowly started walking towards Gustav. Gustav remembered this sound from earlier when Chad battled other cadets. It was the sound made whenever he was activating his bloodline. Combination has been activated. Gustav had wanted to try a particular type of combination in a battle for a long time. He had made use of this particular transformation before using combination, but never in a battle. Beast transformation bloodline has been activated. Gustav's body slowly started turning black as his muscles expanded, and he grew taller. Black claws protruded from his finger as tusks grew out of his thighs, along with a horn on his forehead. His head was transforming into one that looked like a bunny, but then he had 8 long fangs protruding out of his mouth with crimson red eyes. This was the combination of 3 transformations from his beast's bloodline. One was from the Bloodwolf, the other was from the mutated bull, and the last one was from the demonic bunny he killed several months back. This was one of the beast's bloodlines he had acquired back then but didn't see the need to use and eventually forgot about. But when he recently went through his collection of beast bloodlines, he realized that many of them actually had useful abilities. However, he was used to making use of the mutated bull and bloodwolf since they were the highest in terms of physical strength. Now making use of this combination would allow him to make use of them together without having to swap one out for the other. Good thing combination leveled up. "Maybe you'll be able to combine up to 5 in the future," Gustav said internally as he stared at Chad's frame from above. Chad was also close to 7 feet tall, but now Gustav was the one looking down on him after the transformation. Gasped Dash. "What in the world is that? Dash. Just how many transformation can he perform?" Everyone in the crowd of spectators could feel the pressure radiating from this frightening form Gustav had taken. Chad paused his footsteps a few 10 feet away from Gustav and smirked. "Do you think you're the only one with an ability to bring transformations into being?" Chad voiced out before placing his right hand on his left and cutting himself with his fingernails. Shai-hee. He did the same to his right hand using his left hand. Blood began to ooze out of the cuts and dropped to the ground. Pit! Pat! Pit! Pat! Pit! Pat! Pit! Pat! The spectators were quite surprised as they had never seen Chad use this technique in other battles. It dawned on them that Chad must have been saving it for better opponents. "Blood Army! Multiplier!" Chad voiced out. The bubbling sound reverberating across the place increased as the drops of blood on the ground started increasing in size. In a matter of seconds, it transformed into a humanoid-looking being with reddish features. Although it was structured just like Chad with similar body proportions, unlike a real person, it was reddish in color like blood with no actual skin like a normal person. As Gustav took a step forward, more and more of these reddish figures were being conjured, and in a few moments, over 30 of them had appeared. Chapter 443. A bloody reddish armor formed around Chad's real body as he dashed forward with his blood clones. Loud sounds of feet striking the ground reverberated across the place as Gustav arrived in front of the first 4 blood clones. Their arms transformed into sharp bloody blades as they hacked towards Gustav's gigantic frame. One leapt upwards and stabbed towards Gustav's left shoulder while another one aimed for his right abdominal area. Swee-eye! Gustav grabbed the hand of the one who leapt upwards first while spinning around to dodge the other 2 attacking him from the right. Fwaya! He raised the one he grabbed and flung him downwards towards the 4th one on the left. Bang! A blood mess was made as both blood clones slammed into each other, bursting into bloody goo that splattered across the place. Gustav turned towards the side and swung out his foot towards the 2 he had dodged earlier, blasting 2 holes in their chest as they flew backwards and landed on the ground once again, causing a bloody mess. Chad had made use of this opportunity, and was currently leaping towards Gustav while holding on to 2 blood whips which he swung towards Gustav's neck while in midair. Gustav turned to face him, and the rest of the blood clones approaching, and opened his mouth. Raihaheya! Sonic boom blasted out of his mouth, causing ring-like waves to scatter across the place. Bang! 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 Boom! Chad was surprised as the waves slammed into him and his clones, sending them flying backwards with intensity. The entire stage vibrated as the waves kept blasting forward from his mouth for several seconds, causing cracks to appear in different places. The spectators were once again astonished by this after feeling the vibration from their position since it even affected both mountains. Gustav stopped his scream after disintegrating every one of the blood clones and blasting Chad a few feet into the stage. He breathed in and out heavily for a few seconds. 2400 EP. He noticed that he lost many energy points from that one scream and decided not to use it so brashly again. Even the instructors were surprised after seeing the cracks on the stage, which were slowly mending due to the nanites installed within. Chad leapt to his feet with a look of humiliation after being buried a few minutes after the duel had just begun. He looked around for a few moments, and noticed the blood stains everywhere. Looks like I misjudged his strength. What the hell is with the new transformation? He keeps pulling new transformations out of nowhere. Chad had a frustrated look as he thought. Chad stretched out his right hand towards the side as he noticed Gustav approaching him. Zwyanin! All the blood scattered across the place started floating towards him. Gustav swung out his fist towards Chad, who quickly dashed towards the side to dodge after conjuring up a blood clone to take the hit in his place. Bang! Gustav's fist slammed into the clone, blasting it to pieces as his fist still traveled downwards and slammed onto the stage as well. KRHHYKKK. Cracks appeared all over the place as the entire vicinity vibrated again. Chad was starting to wonder how powerful Gustav's punch was after witnessing that. Even Gustav could feel his strength was nothing to scoff at after the triple transformation, despite the significant reduction of his speed. However, he hadn't activated dash since the beginning since he was just testing things out first. Chad had finally had enough time to draw back his blood and even make it larger. I need something bigger and stronger, Chad said internally as his eyes grew bloodshot. As Gustav turned around to dash towards him, the blood surrounding Chad suddenly blasted outwards, and a massive creature was being formed. Gustav could smell the intense metallic stench. The blood was oozing out as he threw his fist forward once again. Bam! Gustav's fist was stopped by a wall of blood as the transformation process completed a moment after. A massive 16-foot-tall humanoid red creature that was 4 feet taller than Gustav stared down at him. Chad leapt upwards and merged with the massive creature, causing it to get redder as the strong stench of blood increased even more. Hi-ya! It screamed out as it prepared to attack, but Gustav screamed right back at it. Raihaheya! Sonic waves shot out of his mouth, once again slamming into the massive creature and knocking it several hundred feet backwards. Gustav stopped the instant this happened so as not to lose too much energy. Sprint has been activated. He dashed forward with intensity, and flung his leg towards the side of the creature before it could land on the ground. Chad, who was controlling the blood creature from within, reacted quickly by making it spin in the air and landing on its feet to balance itself. A massive club-like weapon made of blood protruded out of the creature as it swung it fiercely towards Gustav. Gustav slashed towards it with his black claws, cleanly cutting through it before dashing forward again. Gustav lowered his hand to throw an uppercut. Bang! A loud sound reverberated across the place as Gustav's fist tore a hole through its head. Cracks appeared on the ground where his legs were positioned. To his surprise, the creature still drove its left fist forward towards Gustav's chest, while its head was still in a messy state. Gustav swerved towards the left quickly and threw a jab at its side. Bang! Gustav landed another clean hit on it, forcing it several hundred steps backwards. He decided not to give it a break and lunged at it yet again. Hand-to-hand combat broke out between them as Gustav heavily rained fists on it while dodging every single attack it sent out. Bang! 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 Gustav's blow turned fiercer each time as he noticed that all his punches were hardly causing any damage since the creature kept going. Chapter 444. Bang! 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 Gustav's blow turned fiercer each time as he noticed that all his punches were hardly causing any damage since the creature kept going. After landing another uppercut, Gustav opened his mouth and shot out another burst of sonic waves. Raihaheya! Chad and his blood creature were blasted several hundred feet backwards and kept bouncing and rolling across the place after slamming into the ground repeatedly. Gustav dashed forward and made use of gravitational displacement. Gravitational displacement has been activated. As Chad tried getting up along with his blood creature, he felt heavier than before, making it harder to stand. The instant Gustav arrived in front of him, he was already swinging his leg towards his face. Bang! Another powerful smash to the face sent Chad and his blood creature flying towards the end of the stage before slamming into the dome. Gustav had noticed that the redness of the blood creature faded away a little after his previous attacks. After checking it out with God eyes, he understood that his hits were truly causing damage since its energy had reduced, but it would take time since it was durable. Gustav was about to attack again when the creature screamed out loud and started turning redder than before. Gustav noticed that strains of energy had been circulated around the creature's body, which led him to believe this was the reason Chad merged with the creature. Raihaheya! Gustav screamed out again, causing circular waves to charge forward immensely. The blood creature arm transformed into a massive solid triangular shield which it placed in front of itself. Bang! The waves slammed into the shield but only caused the creature to slide back by a few feet, unlike before. It quickly spun towards the side, removing itself from the path of the destructive waves and dashed forward with speed as a bloody weapon was shot out of its body. Swai! A massive blood whip appeared in its hand, which it quickly flung towards Gustav before he could change the direction of the sonic waves. Gustav closed his mouth and quickly swerved towards the side to dodge. However, even after the whip passed by his side, it still curved around and started heading in his direction again. Swee-eye! As Gustav jumped backwards, the massive blood whip slammed to the ground, creating a dent with several cracks. The creature started waving it around intensely, causing Gustav to dodge repeatedly due to the flexibility and unpredictable movement. As Gustav jumped forward a bit, the creature charged for him, pushing its massive triangular shield forward. Shulhim! Its speed was so fast that a red blur was created along with a whooshing sound which proved it carried a lot of speed and power. Gustav used the sonic scream again but was blocked by the shield. Gustav had no choice but to push his palms forward to counter the charge since he was literally surrounded by the fluid swinging blood whip. Palm strike has been activated. Boom! He slid back by a few feet as his palms slammed into the shield, causing the ground to give way as lines of cracks created by his feet stomping on the ground could be seen. As they wrestled for power, Gustav pushed the shield towards the side and grabbed hold of the 16-feet creature by its arms before raising it upwards. Fwiwe! Before Chad could understand what was happening, he and his blood creature were headed for the ground. Bang! Gustav slammed its head forcefully into the ground, creating a small pit in which its head was stuck. Gustav arched his right arm back again with force before pushing it forward with intensity. Bang! His fist slammed into the back of the creature, catapulting it forward once again. Gustav stretched both arms out, causing his black claws to grow further in length before dashing outwards again. Whoosh! He had decided he was going to rip the creature apart this time. Chad noticed his approach and tried stabilizing the creature while in midair, but Gustav arrived in front of them before they could land on the ground. Gustav arched both arms back this time with force before stabbing his claws forward. Poochie, his claws tore straight through the belly and chest region of the creature and came out the back. His arms inside the creature caused it to remain lifted in the same position in midair. Gustav's eyes squinted as he stared at the reaction of the creature after the attack. He fell for it, Chad said internally as he pulled himself out of the creature from the back. The instant Gustav noticed Chad, he tried pulling his arm out of the creature, but he suddenly felt the hole he created within it tightening around his hand. The body of the creature hardened and glued tightly to his arms. He tried pulling his arm out of it repeatedly, but it was to no avail. He was stuck within the 16-foot-tall creature, and also holding it up in midair. Chad suddenly lunged at him. Thump! Gustav opened his mouth, shot out another beam of sonic waves. Thwaiwaya! Chad dodged it by spinning towards the side, and even when Gustav kept turning his head to change direction, he could not compare his body reaction to before because of his hindered body movement. Chad conjured a massive blood club which he slammed into the side of Gustav's face, causing him to stagger backwards. Before Gustav could react, he was already swinging it towards his face again. Swerve! While carrying the creature that weighed over 1,000 kilograms, Gustav still managed to move to the side to dodge the next attack. However, when he was about to dodge the next one again, the creature his arms were currently trapped in suddenly moved and joined its massive hands together before raising them up and bringing them down on Gustav's back. Bam! As Gustav received the hit, one leg gave way, and he slammed his right knee onto the ground. Chad once again used that opportunity to attack him from behind, slamming the blood club heavily into his back. Bang! Why? Chapter 445. Guess who's gonna be my dog for the upcoming months? He voiced out with a look of pride and delight before aiming for Gustav's left leg. Swoon! Bang! Gustav's left leg gave way as the blood club slammed into it, causing him to fall to his knees. It was quite clever of him to trap me this way, Gustav said internally as he plotted a way out of the predicament. He didn't want to make use of sonic waves again because it took up a lot of energy. The creature raised its hands again and flung them towards Gustav's back while Chad once again attacked from behind. Gustav raised his head up and opened his mouth widely before gnashing his teeth against the hands that were descending upon his head. His teeth fiercely bit into the hands of the blood creature, disrupting its attack while Gustav quickly stood to his feet and spun around with his legs swinging out. Bam! His left leg slammed into the blood-like club, causing Chad to slide back by a few feet. Gustav growled loudly as he tightened his teeth around the hands of the creature, biting fiercely into its body. As his fangs sunk deeply into them, he turned his head towards the side with force, yanking the arms out of the creature's body. Plop! Releasing the grip of his teeth on them, both hands fell to the ground with a thud as red blood spread across the place. At this point, Chad was already dashing forward again with intensity. Gustav roared out loudly as his arm muscles budged intensely while he forcefully tried separating both his arms that were still trapped in the body of the blood creature. Krikuul! A loud tearing sound reverberated across the place as everyone watched the 16-feet creature being ripped in two from the inside out. Chad's eyes widened slightly as he saw Gustav rip his blood creature in two, freeing his hand and grabbing onto both parts of the creature. Fwaiwe! Gustav flung one part of the creature towards Chad, causing a whooshing sound as it swung forward, cutting through the air. Bang! Chad tried blocking the hit, but he was swooped away with force as the hardened half of his blood creature slammed into him. His body flew across the air, repeatedly spiraling as Gustav chased after him. Thump! Gustav leapt into the air while holding on to the second part, and swung it down towards Chad's body with force. As Chad's woozy head cleared while his body was still traveling in midair, he looked upwards and saw Gustav descending from above towards his body with what looked like a mighty hammer. On closer look, it was the other half of the body of his blood creature. He clasped his palm together, causing a blood-like shield to be conjured in front of him just before Gustav slammed the body part into him. Boom! A loud explosion resounded across the place as Chad was sent tumbling down along with his shield slamming heavily onto the ground. His body created a deep pit, but as if that wasn't enough, Gustav, who was still in midair, somersaulted to increase the force of his landing and landed in the exact same spot as Chad. Bang! Another loud sound rang out as cracks spread across the stage, and a cloud of dust covered the place. Blurg! Chad coughed out blood as Gustav's massive foot slammed into his chest. His blood shield had been destroyed by the earlier attack. Gustav moved to the side to put one foot down but still kept his left foot on Chad's chest. Chad had blood running down his nose, but he didn't seem to have given up. On knowing that he was about to perform another attack, Gustav raised his left foot and brought it down with force. Bam! Once again, the spectators heard the bone-cracking sound that reverberated across the place as Gustav's foot slammed heavily onto Chad's chest. His foot was so massive that it covered Chad's entire chest and belly area. Bam! 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 Due to the force at which Gustav kept stomping on Chad's chest, dust kept spreading across the place as both mountains vibrated. Practically all the cadets spectating couldn't see anything happening on stage. Only a few of those who had powerful visual abilities or very strong perception could outline what was going on. Dash. Oh my, what's going on? Dash. The battle is over. Dash. What? Who's getting beat up like that? Dash. I can tell you that it ain't Gustav. The voices of the spectators in the background could be heard as they argued over the thudding sound. Gustav stopped after a few more minutes. At this, Chad's chest had already caved in, and his face was smeared in blood, but surprisingly he was still conscious even though he was barely hanging. When you wake up, you will owe me 3 requests, Gustav voiced out as he squatted down to grab Chad by the neck. Chad coughed out more specks of blood onto Gustav's hand as he tried saying something while being lifted into the air. While still squatting, his calves bulged immensely as he leapt upwards. Thump! Swoah! Gustav's body shot out of the dust while ascending into the air at super speed and arrived at a height of over 1,000 feet in a few moments. The crowd had wide-open mouths while raising their heads to look up. They had never witnessed such a high jump before. Gustav held on to the barely conscious body of Chad by the neck and pushed his head to face the ground as he descended with speed. Why? Gasped the crowd gasped as they understood what he was trying to do. As they arrived a few feet to the ground, Gustav pushed Chad's head down, even more, slamming his face into the ground along with the rest of his body. Boom! The ground split open even more as the cracks intensified and pieces of it blasted across the place. Gustav slowly transformed back into his normal look and started walking out of the stage. Chapter 446. Gustav slowly transformed back into his normal look and started walking out of the stage. As the dust cleared, everyone could see the pit created on the stage. Some had to move even closer to the stage to get a better view. They caught a glimpse of Chad's battered and blood-soaked body within the pit, unconscious. Gustav had totally decimated that area of the stage with Chad's body. The instructors spectating had wanted to intervene at the last moment in fear of Chad getting killed, but the main combat instructor, Officer Cora, stopped any form of intervention. He was counting on the fact that Gustav would know the amount of force he was meant to use. Also, using real-life situations, no one would be there to stop him anyway, so he let it happen. Just as expected, Gustav reduced the force he used in smashing Chad's head against the stage to prevent immediate death, knocking him out instead. Everyone was in awe as they stared at Gustav climbing down the stage. He literally didn't suffer any form of injury even though he had received several hits. This made them wonder just how powerful his body defense was. They had no idea that Gustav had regenerative abilities, which would always be active so long as he had energy points. Gustav checked his current energy points, and noticed that it was dangerously low at the moment. Energy 1400/8250. This was another reason why Gustav wasn't sure if he would be able to defeat Elevra. Having to hide his most powerful abilities caused him to spend an unnecessary amount of energy points while making use of attacks that wouldn't end the battle as quickly as possible. If he fought Elevra in the open, he couldn't go all out, which was why he said it was a 50/50 chance the other day. Thinking about it now, Gustav gauged his battle with Chad and realized his chances of defeating Elevra while hiding his most powerful abilities was even lower than a 50. I need to train more to manage my energy consumption, Gustav decided after realizing that this was a big flaw. Yo, great job, man. Haha, you ripped him apart. He voiced out from up ahead as he approached Gustav. Pa! He gave Gustav a quick high five and wrapped his right hand around his shoulder while dragging him along. Falco and Eldris also showed up, and small giggles could be heard as the most powerful first-year group of cadets walked away like nothing major just went down. Hey, I'm cooking this time. Let's go, y'all. He voiced out merrily as they disappeared into the distance. Both mountains turned scanty as the crowd slowly dispersed while discussing the crazy battle that had just gone down. Yo, do you think he would be able to defeat Elevra? He's still in third position. The ranking boards would have been modified if this was so. No, it only calculated statistics by battles and recorded actions of cadets where they display strength. Which means we can only confirm if both of them battle for real. Aren't we forgetting about Eldris? Gustav and Elevra are more interesting. I would give anything to see them battle. Arguments and opinions were thrown around. Even though they were in the MBO camp, which was isolated from the rest of the world, the traits of the real world still followed a lot of them here. Many of them still loved when fights and good drama stirred up. At this time, the medical team were already taking Chad off the stage while trying to keep him stable. Although Gustav's attack didn't outright kill him, if he had been left there, he would eventually die in a few minutes. That kid is a beast, one instructor said to Officer Cora by the side where Chad was being treated. Literally. Didn't you see his transformation? Officer Cora responded with a serious look. That is the strength of a peak Gilbert rank. Wasn't he a serial ranked cadet earlier? The other female instructor asked. Unprecedented improvement. Officer Cora muttered with a look of awe. This generation of mixed bloods are really a bunch of monsters. Even the Chad kid would have been the strongest in our set, the other instructor added. This is a new age, I guess. This generation will definitely surpass the next. Maybe we will have one that will surpass him in the nearest future, Officer Cora said with a smile. By him. You mean? Before he could complete his sentence, Officer Cora responded. Yeah, the one and only strongest mixed blood alive. Arg. Toy. You, what in the world did you put in it? This tastes like a horse butthole. Good thing I haven't tried it yet. Voices of complaints could be heard from one of the rooms, along with spitting sounds. Yo, my mama always says never waste food, so y'all make sure you finish what's in your dishes, and there's even more where these came from. He voiced out without a look of remorse as he walked out of Gustav's kitchen. Ain't no way I'm taking another spoon of that, Falco said while spitting back the food into the dish in front of him. Damn, you really suck at this, Are you trying to poison us or what? Timmy asked with a look of repulsion. This is truly bad, to be honest, Eldris added. What? Hell nah, you guys ain't gonna waste this beautiful-looking food now, will ya? He shouted out while walking towards the dining area. Truly the dishes did look nice, but if looking nice was the only requirement for a good meal, lots of dishes across the world might qualify. Gustav also walked out of the kitchen a few moments later. How could you allow this abomination to happen, Gustav? Falco asked with a pained look as he stood to his feet. Oh, I was busy making my own dish, Gustav said while moving towards the table with a plate of food in his hand. Chapter 447. The nice aroma drifted into their nostrils, making their stomach grumble in anticipation. Why are y'all not eating? Gustav asked while sitting. They are. Right, guys? He asked with a glare. No way, you can have mine, Falco. Timmy passed his plate over and moved towards Gustav's position. Hee. A wry smile appeared on his face before Dark Falco took over. You dare try to poison this lord? Get this dog shit out of my face, blind pole! He voiced out and passed it over to Eldris. This lord shall have the meal befitting of his tastes, Dark Falco said while standing up and moving towards Gustav. Eldris had 3 dishes in front of him at the moment. He stared at him with a gaze full of intention. Eldris. Waste isn't. Before he could complete his sentence, Eldris voiced out. I can't see. Can't see, can't eat. Eldris said while standing up and waving his hand in front of him like a blind person would act. Didn't you say colors speak to you? He voiced out. Colors, not food. Eldris responded. Except for that one, he said while pointing at Gustav's dish. Fuck y'all, Gustav looked around him as he held his spoon. Why are y'all gathering around me? He asked with a suspicious look while they all stared at his plate like hungry demons. Dark Falco was the first to move over and try snatching the plate. Gustav quickly lifted it from the table and jumped to his feet. What the hell are you doing? He asked. Relinquish your lunch to me, Dark Falco said with a demanding tone. We will enjoy this dish together, Timmy added while also trying to grab hold. Gustav quickly moved towards the living room area as everyone chased after him for the plate. He glared at them for a few seconds and tried tasting his dish while they were chasing Gustav across the living room. His cheek bloated as a disgusted look appeared on his face. Ah, fuck it. He also grabbed a spoon and dashed towards the living room area to join in the pursuit. Just like that, a few more days went by, and the week for the Special Class Cadet Challenge arrived again. Which made it 2 months that the first years arrived. Gustav and the others had the white boxes delivered to their rooms again on a Sunday. The number of normal cadets challenging each of them had decreased drastically. Especially Falco and Gustav. Gustav could count only around 10 cadets who were still bold enough to request a challenge. Compared to the over 60 cadets who issued a challenge last month, this was really nothing. Falco had only around 5 normal cadets who issued challenges this time, while he only had like 3 and Eldris had just 1. Timmy, on the other hand, had only become a special class about a month ago, so a lot of normal cadets still saw him as weak and decided to challenge him. He had about 100 challenges issued. Most of Gustav's challengers were still from Matilda's party, so it was understandable that they were up to 10. Unlike the last time, Dietrich didn't issue a challenge. Gustav had bumped into him a few times, and each of those times, he couldn't find the zeal to challenge within Dietrich's eyes like before. Gustav found this pretty weird since Dietrich had shown a kind of character that never backed down, so he didn't expect that he would just give up so easily, especially when he still had 2 more tries. Gustav decided not to read into it too much. This was a better case scenario for him, after all. The aim was to make sure these suitors backed down so Matilda would be able to go on the mission without being tied down by family issues. He felt he owed this to her for helping him out with Boss Danzo's case. Especially when he had to violate her body using another person's look. Gustav had bumped into Endrik a few times in the past few days. They would hold a few seconds of hostile conversations, and Gustav would make sure to get close to him during this so the system could try analyzing him. Endrik's personality was not getting better with the time he spent here. It was even getting worse, which gave Gustav more reason to want to end him. However, Gustav could still sense that something was a bit off about him, which was why he wanted to observe him properly. Both of them were literally stalling for time as it was. Hendrik could tell Gustav was stronger than he was after witnessing the battle with Chad, so he wanted to train more before issuing a death battle. On the other hand, Gustav was stalling to not only give Hendrik a chance to change, but also observe him properly for any abnormalities before taking action. A few more days went by, and finally, it was the night before the next special class challenge day. In an open field, 3 tall silhouettes stood in front of a shorter one. It was in the dark of night, so this particular area was dimly lit. However, their figures still cast long shadows across the grassy area. At the very least, one of you must manage to inject the Gill serum into her thigh, the shorter one of the silhouettes said while handing out 3 tube-shaped test items. Activate its microform so you won't be figured out, he added. The 3 of them nodded in understanding after collecting the item. Fail and it'll make your life a living hell within the MBO after I become a ranked personnel, he added with a fierce tone, causing the other 3 silhouettes to slightly shiver in fear. Get lost, he said before turning around to leave. Yes, they answered with a shaky voice. He suddenly stopped after moving a few steps forward. Remember, if you're caught and my name slips from any of your tongues, not only would I be eventually let go, you would be in a situation of being kicked out and I will make your lives a living hell, he voiced out coldly before resuming his steps forward. Chapter 448. Remember, if you're caught and my name slips from any of your tongues, not only would I be eventually let go, you would be in a situation of being kicked out and I will make your lives a living hell, he voiced out coldly before resuming his steps forward. The 3 behind shivered even more upon hearing this. Before they could respond to his threat, he had already disappeared into the distance. They also went their separate ways, disappearing into the dark of the night. The night went by in a flash, and the next morning arrived. Throughout the night, Gustav had remained awake since channeling his bloodlines. He had already decided that he would be spending the entire next Sunday making use of recreation. Most of his other bloodlines were C and D grades, so they weren't as powerful, and he couldn't use every single one of them in battle, so he had taken time to pick the ones he would be combining with the bloodlines he mainly used. Before the alarm rang, he had already stood up from his sitting position and moved out of his room. Falco, Ildris and Timi, with the other male special class cadets that were in the same residence, were also moving out at this time as well. Chad, who had just finished recovering some time ago, spotted Gustav up ahead and quickly moved back inside his room before closing the door. Gustav and the others didn't even spot him as they went through ES vortex and arrived directly on the playing field where they usually began their morning routines. He was also getting stronger each day, so his vortexes could transport them that far. As they arrived, the alarm rang out, and cadets who hadn't arrived started making their way there. The morning routine later ended, and the cadets were free for the next 2 hours before having to visit the battle arena for the special class challenges. Everyone was hyped up once again to see how things would unfold today. Although they had heard about how the special class cadets went through bloodline strengthening and had experienced a leap in strength, everyone was still interested in seeing just how much they had improved. Gustav and Chad's fight was a good representation of this, but not everyone witnessed the fight. Gustav went on to complete his tasks for the day before it was 12 in the afternoon. After he was done, he moved towards the battle arena with the others. Surprisingly, they happened to sit somewhere close to the girls today. Glade, Angie and Matilda were just a few seats behind them. Angie had already called their attention to Gustav and the boys in front, but Glade seemed to be quite distracted. Glade's face looked stressed compared to her usual green glowing outlook. Hey, relax, you will win, and sure. Angie seemed to have noticed her look and voiced out to comfort her. H&M. Glade nodded as her tense look softened a bit after hearing Angie. You just have to be careful of her hidden weapon. There are a lot of theories behind it, Matilda added from the side. It's a strand of her hair. It just happens to be invisible, Angie muttered. It's a piece of her hair? Glade asked with a confused look. Yeah. It's just invisible and she is able to weaponize it and use it for sneak attacks due to that, Angie explained. How did you know it was her hair? Glade asked. Gustav said so, Angie responded. I thought you and Gustav were not on talking terms? Matilda said with a slight look of confusion. Yeah. Falco told me, Angie said with a wry smile. So that's what this is. You're literally stalking him, making use of Falco. Matilda put two and two together and figured this out. No, I just want to know how he's doing from time to time, that's all. Angie stuttered while trying to defend herself. No, that's stalking. It's bad, you should stop doing that, Matilda said with an upright expression. Actually, no. Angie, you should keep doing it if it makes you happy. Glade suddenly chipped in. I should? I thought you disliked Gustav? Angie asked with a surprised expression. I don't dislike him. I dislike his attitude towards a lot of things. I will only stop if he changes his attitude towards you, Glade explained. It's kinda bad that she does that. If both of them are not on talking terms, Angie shouldn't be trying to stalk him, and neither should Falco be telling her things he probably doesn't want her to know, Matilda added. Do you like Gustav? Glade turned to the side and asked Matilda. What? No, I'm not interested in any form of romantic relationship right now, Matilda answered instantly. Then let it be. This is the only way for Angie to keep tabs on him, Glade voiced out. All right then. Just don't overdo it. Matilda decided to drop the topic. I want. Angie smiled and turned to look forward at Gustav's position. How did Gustav figure out that it was a strand of her hair? Glade wondered internally. This should be another ability that needs to be noted, but what exactly are its features? She thought while staring in the direction of Gustav's group. In a few more minutes, the event began, and just like the last time, Officer Cole stepped forward to oversee the matches. The gigantic black orb above started shuffling the cadets once again before picking the first turn of duels. Everyone wondered if Elevra was going to have any challengers this time, just like the last one. After all, Ria's battle with her was a good lesson to everyone that she wasn't to be messed with. But who knew if there were other masochists like him who were interested in constant pain reception? The cadets who saw their names displayed had already moved towards the battle rings in front to have their first battle. Chapter 449. In a few more moments, sounds of battle reverberated across the place as attacks were sent forth. Bang! 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 Boom! To everyone's surprise, the battles ended in spans of 30 seconds to 1 minute. Gasped, the spectators looked across the place, and could see the normal cadets who issued challenges, knocked out. Some of them even had been beaten so badly they weren't even able to land a single hit. Watching the first turns end in less than 2 minutes, a lot of normal cadets who issued challenges began to have cold feet. Some of them were feeling conflicted and wondered if they should still partake, or not. Others decided to still watch the other turns before making up their minds. Just like that, an hour went by, and the spectators nearly had their eyes popping out of the sockets after witnessing the battles between the special classes and normal cadets. Even those normal cadets who were dangerously close to the strength of special classes were being defeated with ease. This made them understand that the improvement the special class cadets went through was nothing to scoff at. Gustav watched from his seat as Endrik went against a normal cadet who issued a challenge. According to the rumors, a lot of cadets issued challenges due to the fact that they expected Endrik to at least be on the weak side because of his age. The ones who thought this way had never witnessed him using his abilities or never actually saw him doing anything powerful, which was why they chose him. Bang! 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 Everyone had their mouths wide open as they saw a relatively powerful normal cadet being tossed across the place. His body lifted into the air and slammed the top of the dome before falling with immense speed and slamming into the ground of the battle ring repeatedly. It was so fast that they could only see afterimages. The person causing this was Endrik, who was standing on the south side of the ring and waving his right hand up and down in fast motion. He created small pits and cracks all across the place, and used a fresh part of the ground in the ring after a new place had been blasted open due to the body's slam. The person being tossed across the place like a ragdoll bled from every part of his body and eventually passed out after not being able to release himself from Endrick's telekinetic grip. Endrick, your opponent has lost consciousness. You can stop now. Officer Cole voiced out from up ahead. Swayaya. Bang. Swayaya. Bang. Swayaya. Bang. Swayaya. Bang. Swayaya. Bang. Endrick still kept doing it, and turning the cadet's body from side to side to make sure every part of his body slammed into the ground. Stop now! Officer Cole shouted out, but Endrick still kept at it. Dash. Hey, what's wrong with him? Dash. He's just like his brother, so cruel. Dash. Boo! Whoosh. Officer Cole swooped into the ring and grabbed hold of Endrick's hand while pulling him towards the side. I told you to stop, kid, he said with a strong voice. Why so uptight, officer? He should have come into the ring prepared to suffer. Endrick said without a shred of remorse as he pulled his arm away from Officer Cole's grip and walked away from the ring. The medical team quickly came up and started tending to the battered body of the cadet. Endrick Oslov has received 1 strike. The voice of an AI rang across the place. Next time you try something like that, it will result in immediate disqualification and your win will be reversed, Officer Cole said before leaping out of the ring. Whatever. Anyone that dares to challenge me again will be joining that guy in the medical ward, Endrick said with an unrepentant look as he walked away. Dash. He's way worse than Gustav. Dash. At least Gustav knows when to stop. This little bitch has no damn respect. Dash. Ayu, isn't this kid 12 or was it 13? He's already acting like some big shot? Dash. The 2 brothers never cease to amaze me, one with ego the size of a plane and the other with ego the size of a planet. Endrick could hear the grumbling voices of cadets in the background as he walked back to his seat, but he remained unbothered. He even smiled because he could tell that his action had etched deep into the minds of everyone, especially the normal cadets. He was right because, at this point, those who challenged him were already thinking of forfeiting their matches if they ever got called up in the next turns. Yeah, your brother is an arse, he said to Gustav. Not my brother? Did you forget? Gustav voiced out with a disapproving look. Oh yeah? You still didn't tell me the story behind that, although I do understand that blood relations sometimes don't bring about real connection. He said with a look of curiosity. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, why? Big brother an arse, little brother a bigger arse. Someone voiced out 3 rows in front while standing up. Hey, take that back. He shouted out in response while pointing at the cadet. The part about the big brother. For the little brother, you're absolutely correct. He added, causing Gustav, Ildris and Falco besides him to burst out in laughter. An argument was about to break out even though Gustav didn't really care about their thoughts. He finally stopped dragging the matter back and forth with the cadet, and took his seat as this particular turn ended. The orb floating shuffled once again for the next turn, and Angie happened to find herself among the next batch. She quickly moved towards the battle ring a few moments later to duel with her first opponent. Her opponent was a girl with a scar on the left side of her face wearing a purplish vest. Angie greeted her respectfully before the start, but she totally ignored her. Begin! Chapter 450. Angie greeted her respectfully before the start, but she totally ignored her. Begin! The instant the go-ahead was given for the both of them to begin the battle, Angie's opponent lunged at her as chain-like metallic objects shot out of her body. Swoosh! Angie dashed across the place, dodging the 6 chain-like hands trying to slam into her, which she found quite easy to dodge due to her high speed. Gai! Gi! The chain-like metallic objects could extend and lessen at her will to a particular length. Swerve! 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 Angie refrained from making contact as she looked for an opening within the swings and shooting out of the extending chain-like objects. As she found an opening towards the opponent's northeast side, she dashed forward quickly towards that place while swinging her leg forward. The opponent, who was still sending out attacks quickly, was unable to follow Angie's speed, as all she could barely see were silver streaks as she swung the 6 chains around. However, the instant Angie dashed forward towards the opening, she pushed her fist forward towards the exact position Angie seemed to be swinging her foot from. "It's still in micro form, no one would notice," the girl said internally as she reached out towards Angie's outstretched right leg. This counterattack seemed to have come out of nowhere, appearing exactly when Angie was only moments away from landing a hit. However, the movement of the opponent's hand still seemed a bit slow to Angie, so she quickly spun around at the last moment, while swinging her left leg instead. Bam! A loud sound rang out as Angie's foot crashed into the face of the cadet, sending her flying backwards with fast speed as blood shot out of her nose. Angie dashed forward again and leapt upwards while sending out her foot again. SHHRRHHHHHH. Her speed allowed her body to shoot through the chain-like objects wrapped around the body of the opponents, while she was spiraling across the air. Successfully pushing them aside, her feet once again crashed into the body of the opponent, this time on the chest, causing a loud bone-cracking sound to ring out. Bang! Her opponent slammed into the west side of the dome and passed out instantly. It was a relatively easy battle for Angie, and she felt like she didn't even need to struggle too much to win. However, seeing the blood made her feel nauseous again, but she put pressure on her belly region, hardening it and forcing herself to stare at the state of the opponent without passing out. After a few seconds of staring, she walked off the ring with sweat rolling down her forehead. On the other sides of the rings, the other special classes were also concluding their battles as of now. One ring was empty due to the fact that the opponent of the special class cadet decided to forfeit, and this had already happened quite a few times. Gustav had watched Angie's battle from beginning to end, nodding in satisfaction after seeing her improvement. On another side of the ring, Hendrik watched with a slightly disappointed expression. Of course she failed. "Good thing there's still Rahim and Gull," he said internally while watching Angie. His eyes followed her as she walked towards her seat. He took his vision a bit forward and noticed Gustav staring at her as well. Gotcha," Hendrik said internally as he squinted his eyes in a suspicious manner. Glare! All of a sudden, Gustav's eyes changed direction as he turned to stare straight at Hendrik. Huh! Hendrik was stiff in place as Gustav's cold eyes looked straight into his like he was staring at his soul. Smirk! A smirk appeared on Gustav's face for a few moments before he changed the direction of his eyes back to stare at the platform beneath. What was that look? Hendrik wondered as cold sweat ran down his back. It can't be. Does he know? Hendrik wondered as he looked around the place. It's impossible, there's no way he could. Or could he? Maybe I should call it off. Hendrik found himself in a state of confusion as he struggled with his next choice of action. The event continued, and Gustav's turn eventually came after the rest of the guys had already taken part in their duels. He arrived in one of the rings and waited for his opponent. After a minute of waiting, the person was a no-show, and the 10 seconds countdown ended. Dash. Yo, what's the point of issuing a challenge if they're not even gonna show? Dash. I know, right, spineless bastards. Dash. Why didn't y'all issue challenges then? At least they tried. Dash. There's no way he'll ever try battling Gustav. Dash. Now who's the spineless bunch? As Gustav walked back to his seating position, he could hear the voices of the cadets speaking in the background. Some of them even complained about how they didn't like the smug look on his face and compared him to Hendrik. Although it had spread already that Gustav and Hendrik had a kind of weird relationship, only those who lived in Plankton City and watched the broadcast understood very well why this was so. Time passed by very fast, and in about 2 hours, every special class cadet was already having their last turn. Falco, and Eldris already battled once with normal cadets. In their second turns, they had no shows, while Timmy had to battle with cadets in both rounds because a lot of them still doubted his strength. Gustav, on the other hand, had 2 turns where both opponents didn't show up, and right now, he was starting to get bored. The only interest he had right now was in seeing Glade's battle with the loud-mouthed girl and that of Varys as well. At this point, not a single normal cadet had managed to be on the same footing as any of the special class. Even though only about 2 normal cadets became special classes last time, there were still instances where some normal powerful cadets managed to give the special class opponents a tough time. Unfortunately for them, they couldn't even last over 2 minutes battling this time. In a few more minutes, Gustav saw his image on the orb again and moved towards one of the battle rings. He was once again expecting the same scenario where no one would show up, so he stood there with a disinterested look on his face. Chapter 451. Gustav Crimson, I am your opponent this time. A small male voice could be heard from up ahead as a short cadet with slanted eyes and bald head walked in. Gustav stared at him and nodded slightly in response. At least someone showed up, Gustav said as he analyzed the opponent in front of him. I am Kim, please guide me. I only wish to exchange a few pointers with you, Kim voiced out respectfully. Gustav was a bit taken back by this request because it was the first time he was coming across such a respectful opponent without any form of haughtiness in their eyes. Begin! As the go-ahead was given for the battle to begin, Gustav remained in position. Come at me with everything you've got, Gustav voiced out. To many who were specifically focused on his match, he sounded really cocky with this statement, but Gustav only said this to analyze Kim's battle pattern. Kim crouched a bit as he raised his right arm above his left and pulled it back before dashing forward. His arms transformed into a bluish color as he arrived in front of Gustav and thrust out his fingers towards his neck. Gustav swiftly shifted his face to the side, cleanly dodging the finger thrust, and shifted back to dodge another one from his left arm. Thwai! Swerve! Thwai! Swerve! Thwai! Swerve! Kim's hands were moving at an extremely fast pace as the sounds of his fingers thrusts, as if the air was being torn through. You lack foresight. You can't predict your enemy moves enough to throw a feint and deceive them so long as they're faster than you, Gustav voiced out as he kept dodging. Learn to read your opponent and adapt to their speed even though they're faster than you are. At this point you have no hope against stronger opponents. Gustav kept stating what he noticed as he bent backwards to dodge a spinning kick and turned his body 180 degrees to the side before straightening himself again. Kim's face turned even more serious as he processed Gustav's words. Now use more powerful attacks, Gustav said while gesturing. Kim jogged forward again as his palm glowed even brighter, and he shot out a bright beam after arriving in front of Gustav. Gustav moved to the side, causing his hair to be blown upwards by the wind generated from the blue beam. Kim attacked severally, shooting out the same beams in different ways, but Gustav was still able to dodge each of them. Don't be so basic with your attacks, experiment more with different types of unpredictable movements, Gustav advised as his body swayed in a kind of zigzag way, dodging both Kim's thrusts once again. He turned to the side while sending out the back of his palm. Bam! His palm slammed into Kim's chest, causing him to slide several 10 feet backwards. Kim breathed in and out heavily. You're in a whole different league, so I doubt anything I tried would work, Kim said with a crestfallen expression. No, you're just too predictable. Although you don't use any excess movement, there are times when excess movements are necessary to fool your opponents, Gustav said while daunting an encouraging tone. They'll never be able to win against you, Kim said with a defeated expression. I never said you would. But at least try putting up a fight. I'm sure you don't want to look pathetic in the midst of this crowd, so come on, show me what you've got, Gustav said while gesturing towards Kim again. Kim looked around for a bit before focusing on Gustav. A newfound look of determination appeared on his face before he adopted a battle stance and dashed forward once again. He started attacking a lot more aggressively than before as he jumped upwards and slammed his leg downwards towards Gustav's head. Gustav once again moved to the side, but Kim seemed to have predicted this as he suddenly spun in midair, swinging his left leg towards Gustav's current position as he descended. Grab! Gustav grabbed hold of the leg a few inches from his face and smiled. Now that's more like it, he voiced out before flinging Kim away. Kim flipped in the air repeatedly and shot out another bluish beam after finding his balance in midair. Swoosh! Bang! Bang! Fwum! Their battle continued to be dragged on for about 10 minutes more before Gustav landed another hit on Kim while telling him what he did wrong. Dash. Is he training him? Dash. What the hell? I was expecting a good fight. What is this? Dash. Well, would you look at that, he should become an instructor then. Dash. Well, he's already an officer, so yeah. The spectators couldn't believe their eyes seeing Gustav instructing Kim when the battle should have ended ages ago. After a few more minutes, Kim stopped and moved back by a few steps before joining his fists together and bowing slightly in respect. Thank you for the pointers. I will train more using the advice you have given here today, he voiced out. No problem, you're quite the fast learner. Gustav responded with a nod. Kim smiled as he raised his head and turned around. I forfeit the match, he shouted out. The dome was lifted, and they both moved back to their seating positions after Gustav appeared as the winner on the orb. Dash. Looks like he's not as evil and cruel as everyone painted him out to be. Dash. This was quite surprising. To think he'd take the time to do this. Some of the spectators felt they had misjudged Gustav after witnessing his earlier duel. Although they still couldn't see any difference in his attitude as he walked towards his seating position, those who didn't know him before camp felt there was more to him than what he was always displaying. Angie smiled from her sitting position with shimmering eyes while staring at Gustav. This is one of the reasons my feelings for you can't disappear even if I tried. Chapter 452. Angie smiled from her sitting position with shimmering eyes while staring at Gustav. This is one of the reasons my feelings for you can't disappear even if I tried, she said internally. Gustav arrived at his sitting position and received a fist bump from E. That was cool, man, he said with a smile. Well, pretty everyone who has been on the receiving end of your brutality deserved it. Ildris muttered from the side. I would have smacked that weakling like a buzzing mosquito that he is. Falco's alter ego voiced out from the side. Shut up, Dark Falco, he stated with a burst of light laughter. How dare you refer to me that way? Falco's alter ego voiced out with a repulsed tone. That was a good one. Timmy laughed as well after hearing that. Falco took control of his body, and the group continued to discuss what had just gone down as the event continued. In a few more minutes, Vera's face appeared on the orb along with her opponent, Laun Gills. She walked towards one of the rings where her opponent was already waiting. Laun Gills was a special class cadet that was ranked in the top 60s. Gustav was the one who specifically picked her as the cadet for Vera to challenge. He had given Vera a lot of information on her abilities and also made Vera do some secretive action 1 month ago. Laun was the tallest girl among all the females in the MBO, so she had a little bit of popularity due to that mixed with the fact that she was a special class. Vera arrived in the battle ring and raised her head to stare at the 7 feet tall blonde girl in front of her with 2 ram horns protruding from the sides of her head. Are you ready, little one? Laun asked as a masculine voice drifted out her mouth. Vera is prepared, Vera said as she brought out a handful of seeds from her storage device. SSSHHSSSHSHHH. Green gas started oozing out of her body. Begin! The instant the go-ahead was given, Vera threw the seeds out from both her hands, causing them to spread around the place. As they made contact with the ground, the green gas oozing from her body burst forth, crazily covering the entire place. Laun was already about to charge forward, but then the entire place was covered in green gas before she knew it. Muscular black arms protruded out the sides of her body as she waved them around forcefully, trying to clear a visible path through the foggy green gas. Thrya! Thry! Thry! Thrya! Weird tree and branch snapping sounds reverberated across the place as everyone witnessed trees growing out of the stage. As Laun waved her hands, causing a few feet ahead to be cleared of green gas. But the instant that happened, a tree root could be seen piercing forward with speed. Loun quickly moved to the side to dodge the flying roots that were quite massive in size. As the thick sharp-tipped roots passed by her side, she dashed forward. Thwai! The roots turned to the side suddenly, and wrapped around her body before raising her up. Loun grabbed onto it quickly and forcefully ripped it apart before it could lift her further into the air. Bam! Landing on the ground, more and more roots along with branches and vines from trees shot towards her from different directions. Loun leapt forward upon seeing this, and raised all her 6 hands with intensity before flinging them downwards as she descended. Bang! A ripple of shockwaves spread across the vicinity, clearing the green gas in a matter of seconds. The charge blasted all the roots, branches and vines sent out as well, giving Loun a good view of the environment. She looked around and could see that the entire battle ring had turned into a kind of forest. Multiple trees and plants of different types had grown in many areas, and Vera was nowhere to be found. Thwai! 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 Roots and vines once again shot out towards Loun. She turned towards the side and grabbed hold of the first one that arrived in front of her before pulling it with intensity, and punching another one away with her other hands. Loun arrived at the first tree and punched forward with 3 of her fists, destroying the entire tree and causing it to be uprooted. While doing that, she had to dodge the other attacks and branches swinging towards her from other directions. While she went about the place smashing trees, she never came into contact with Vera, and even more, trees began to grow in place of the others she smashed. Come out, little one! Loun was starting to get frustrated. It was as if all her efforts were in vain as she saw new trees popping out of the battleground every few seconds. You can't keep this up, I'll keep smashing every one of them, Loun said while raising her 6 arms up and dashing towards the nearest tree again. Bang! 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 Sounds of trees being destroyed and blasted into pieces reverberated across the place as Loun wreaked havoc on the battle ring. Even after another 5 minutes went by, the situation hadn't shifted in her favor, and she hadn't come across Vera. She could already guess that Vera could mask her presence with the green lifeforms spread across the place. Looks like you leave me no choice but to do this, Loun said as her horns started to move. Both her horns began to twist and elongate as their tips turned to face each other. A kind of weird milky-looking electromagnetic charge began to build up in between the tips of both horns. Thump! Loun leapt several hundred feet into the air and turned to face down as she built the charge to its limit and shot it downwards. Thwai! Boom! A loud blast rang out as shockwaves of destruction spread across the entire battle ring. Chapter 453. The entire forest of trees crumbled in nearly an instant as every single tree and plant was decimated by the blast. Vera was affected by the shockwaves and sent flying backwards even though she had already wrapped herself in layers of vines and multiple tree branches for protection. All this time, she had only caused Loun's energy to reduce since she hadn't managed to inflict any damage on her. As Vera stabilized herself before crashing into the dome, she turned to stare at the west side of the spectators' area. Her eyes locked onto a very attractive-looking dirty blonde male who nodded gently in her direction. Vera pushed herself upwards and quickly rolled to the side. Thwai! Bang! Loun landed from the air directly on her initial position and quickly swung out 2 of her right arms towards Vera while turning towards the side. Vera, who hadn't managed to get away completely, was swatted towards the side like a housefly after Loun's arms slammed into her. Vera waved her hands while in midair, causing a nearly dried-off branch to shoot out and wrapped around her. Thwai! It quickly pulled her towards the side while helping her dodge another one of Loun's attacks directed towards her figure. Vera quickly brought out more seeds from her storage device and swung them out. SSHHHH. Once again, green mist oozed out of her figure. Not this time, Loun shouted out as she dashed towards Vera's direction. Spreading all her 6 arms apart, Loun's arms bulged intensely as she clapped her palms together. Pa! 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 As all 6 palms clasped one another, a massive wind spread across the place, which instantly cleared out the green gas, exposing Vera's position within. "Gotcha," Loun said with a smirk as she charged towards her. "Fwaya." Vera's face showed panic as Loun approached her, but the instant Loun arrived in front of her. Smirk. A smirk suddenly appeared on her face. "Gotcha." Vera repeated the exact same words Loun said. The instant Loun heard those words, a chilling feeling suddenly crept down her spine. However, before she could react to it, purplish roots suddenly shot out of the ground as her right leg stomped on it. These roots were 4 in number, each as thick as 5 grown men standing side by side. They surrounded Loun from all sides and wrapped around her figure like snakes, completely covering her body in the blink of an eye. Surprisingly, these roots had some kind of red eyes on them, too, making them look even more hideous than they already did. Dash. "What are those?" Dash. "Those things are making me uncomfortable." Dash. "Gross." Most of the spectators had no idea what these plants were except for a few who knew a thing or two about botany. It was a rare living mutated plant that fed on other living things. The instant they wrap around their prey, they crush all their bones and consume them in a matter of seconds. Loun tried freeing herself from the hold of these plants, but her strength seemed to be failing her. She could feel she was getting weaker and weaker by the second as she stayed within. As seconds went by, the spectators could see the roots quivering and understood that Loun was fighting for her freedom within. "HNNNGGGH." A loud growl was heard a few seconds later as a bright light shot out from within the wraps of these purplish roots. Bang! The roots were suddenly blasted aside as Loun emerged from within with her horns glowing a bright milky light. She breathed in and out profusely as she headed for Vera's position again. Those who knew about these plants knew just how rare they were, so they reckoned that Vera would definitely not have more of those seeds in her possession, so they automatically saw this as the end of the battle and Vera's loss. As Loun's face squeezed up with a dissatisfied look, she dashed towards Vera with intensity. Vera's face showed a crazy smirk again, which caused Loun to stop her movement a few 100 feet away. She had a look of wariness as she looked around for any more hidden traps, but after not seeing any, she decided to end this once and for all. As she took a step forward to move, she suddenly felt her muscles constricting. "WHOT's happen ing?" Her voice cracked as her hand movement stopped. Her body vibrated a little before she lost connection to different other parts of her body. The spectators were in shock as they saw Loun standing in place, unable to move. Vera waved her hand, causing other vines to shoot forward and wrap around Loun's body. She controlled it so that Loun was lifted into the air and swung around before being slammed heavily into the ground. Bang! Vera didn't stop there. She continued repeatedly slamming Loun from place to place all across the grounds of the battle ring. Bang! 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 After a few more seconds, Officer Cole announced that Loun had passed out and instructed Vera to stop. The entire crowd were still in shock as they wondered what had just happened and why Loun had suddenly stopped moving. More especially, the place was in an uproar because this meant there was finally a special class cadet, and someone had lost theirs. As Vera walked away from the stage, she stared at Gustav's position. Gustav smiled at her and nodded with a look of satisfaction. A bright smile appeared on Vera's face in reaction to Gustav's action. She slowly returned to her seat amidst the shocked and disbelieving faces of everyone. Later it spread around that the plant that wrapped around Loun had a paralysis toxin which caused such an effect. Everyone now had looks of understanding and realized that they may have looked down on plant-based bloodline abilities too much. Seeing this made them change their perspectives. Only Gustav and Vera truly knew what had gone down, and how Loun wouldn't really be affected to that extent by the toxin due to her current level of strength. First step accomplished, a smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he thought. Chapter 454. Only Gustav and Vera truly knew what had gone down, and how Loun wouldn't really be affected to that extent by the toxin due to her current level of strength. First step accomplished, a smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he thought. It was quite an easy match-up contradictory to what everyone thought. This was due to the fact that Vera was only faking the hardship and could have won with ease. Not that she was physically stronger or anything, but Vera had already infected Loun with her parasite 1 month back. She could have easily made use of it from the start, allowing Loun to lose easily, but that would have been suspicious, which was why Gustav came up with the battle plan for her to act out. The weakening when she was trapped by the plant and the paralysis were actually Vera's doing. Now that this was over and done with, the only other battle Gustav was interested in was the one with Glade and Havrina. Havrina had approached him a few times during the past month for them to have a duel, but Gustav actively avoided her. She was infatuated with him, which he found similar to Vera except for the fact that this one was only interested in being stronger than everyone else. She couldn't accept that Gustav was stronger during the final MBO test phase, but after witnessing Gustav's feats several times and arriving here, she had no choice but to come to terms with it, but she was very interested in changing that. However, Gustav was not interested in building relations with her. After a few more turns, the event finally ended. Unlike the last time, it ended way earlier due to many cadets chickening out and deciding not to battle. Elevra, who was still the undisputed number 1, didn't have any challengers this time, and Rhea also didn't challenge anyone, which kind of surprised Gustav. Knowing Rhea, Gustav didn't expect him to give up easily, which made him a little worried. "Check on Rhea later," Gustav said to Timmy from the side. "I'm not checking on that idiot," Timmy responded with a disgusted expression. He's your friend, right?" Gustav asked. "I don't stay friends with idiots." Timmy blew out a small breeze from his mouth after saying, "At least that idiot has drive. Although he's an idiot, he is way better than many others who cower and hide when they see a stronger opponent," Gustav said with a profound tone. "Sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but he does have a trait that is needed for improvement if he works on his stupidity, that is," Gustav added with a thoughtful look. Timmy chuckled a bit after hearing that and nodded his head. At the moment, Officer Cole was addressing the cadets as he spoke on today's event. The moment that many cadets had been waiting for finally arrived. The black orb floating above displayed the 2 special class cadets that would be battling today, which were Glade and Havrina. Now that the event had ended, it was time to see who would remain a special class and who would go back to being a normal class. On the bright side, both of them had gone through bloodline strengthening, so they had each gained something even if one of them went back to being normal cadets. Since they were the only ones who were going to battle right now, everyone could focus solely on them. Glade's face turned straight as she peaked her focus and moved towards the ring. Havrina was coming in from the opposite side. They both picked the center battle ring and stood in front of each other as they waited for the go-ahead. "Now remember, whoever wins this duel gets to keep their special class title, while you already know what happens to the loser," Officer Cole announced. Both girls' eyes turned fiercer as they heard that, but unlike Glade, Havrina still had a hint of depravity within her eyes. "Hee, did you miss me, Greenie?" Havrina said with a smile. "Laugh while you still can, because after this battle you won't be able to," Glade responded as her frame started glowing red. "Oh, is that so?" Havrina responded with an even bigger smirk displayed on her face. Her extremely long indigo-colored hair swept upwards as if there was an immense wind blowing it up. "Begin!" The instant the go-ahead was given, both of them lunged towards each other. 2 5-foot-long sickles appeared in her hands as she hacked at Havrina with them. Havrina hairs shot forward, forming long swords while swinging for Glade as well. Clang! Clang! Tssshhhh. Ear-piercing sounds of collision rang out as both of them clashed repeatedly, forcing each other backwards with each collision. Once again, it seemed like they were evenly matched. Those who knew Glade knew just how much of a training freak she was. Besides Gustav, Glade was the only one that cadets could say spent almost every free second of her time training, whereas Havrina was known to be quite laid back. Glade gritted her teeth as she recalled all the time she spent pushing herself even harder than before for this battle. She was quite disappointed that she still seemed to be evenly matched with Havrina in terms of strength. Bang! As they clashed again, Both of them were sent sliding back for about 100 feet as the ground underneath them cracked open in two lines following their legs. Glade raised the sickle on her right hand upwards and threw it forward with intensity towards Havrina. Havrina's hair shot forward and wrapped around the handle of the sickle before spinning it around and flinging it back towards Glade. Fly! Although the speed of the sickle had been doubled as it shot towards her, repeatedly rolling like a fan, it was still Glade's ability, so she could react in time. Swerving towards the left, she reached out her right hand and grabbed onto the handle accurately, halting its movement. SHHHHSSSHHH. Chapter 455. SHHHHSSSHHH. Due to the high speed, she still slid backwards a little after grabbing it. Havrina dashed forward at this time and currently hacked at Glade again with her hair from above in a bid to slash her in half. Glade reacted by rolling over to the side as the hair blade slammed into the ground, causing a 200 feet long split. Glade leapt towards the side after standing up, repeatedly spinning while swinging out the sickles in her grasp. Clang! 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 Havrina's hair once again countered all attacks, parrying them at super speed. It became a full-blown melee battle between them as both of them began to clash repeatedly again. Bang! Bang! Swai! Shwai! Moving across the battle ring and causing destruction to the surroundings, the battle between these two continued to drag on. Come on, Glade, you can do it! Angie said with a tensed expression as she watched from her seating position. Matilda was also hoping as she watched with a tensed expression as well. Gustav, who do you think will win? He asked from the front. It's really hard to tell, especially since they're both consuming energy at the same rate, Gustav said as his eyes turned crimson and green. They also haven't made use of their most powerful attacks yet because they seem to be reserving energy for the perfect time, Ildris added. Does that mean whoever uses their most powerful attack first is likely to lose? Timmy asked with a thoughtful gaze. No. Using their most powerful first doesn't guarantee a win or a lose. Like Ildris said, right timing is what is necessary, which is what they're both waiting for. The right opportunity, Gustav analyzed. But Havrina seems to have the upper hand compared to Glade, Gustav added. The four of them on his sides had slightly opened eyes as they wondered why he would say that. Why does she have the upper hand? Falco asked. Higher endurance. She's like a machine that doesn't feel pain, Gustav added. This was a trait that Gustav noticed Havrina had, which was similar to his. Once you're able to channel and disregard your pain, you can keep going no matter what situation you find yourself, Gustav thought. Pain is like a receptor that limits a person, and everyone is a slave to it except for a few people like himself and Havrina. The last time Havrina was so injured, but she kept laughing and fighting like a psychopath. As the battle continued, both of them had inflicted injuries on each other a few times, and now they were coming to realize that one could not overpower the other without using higher force. Glade had received several injuries from the invisible strand of hair, but none was fatal. Whereas Havrina had fallen to several of Glade's trick attacks. In terms of combat skills, she was better, but Havrina seemed to still hold an advantage over her due to her unique bloodline's abilities. Activating their most powerful attacks, both of them charged at each other once again. A massive cylindrical-shaped red structure, the size of 2 trucks, had been created. It floated in midair behind Glade as she raised her hand up in a manner that depicted that the structure was under her control. At this moment, too, Havrina was also prepared to use one of her most powerful attacks as her hair multiplied and increased in length crazily. Taking the form of a massive spear, it shot forward immensely, ripping through the air like a shooting star. Glade also swung her hand forward, causing the structure she created behind to move forward with speed, causing a kind of immense pressure to descend upon the place. Even before both attacks collided, ripples of shockwaves were already being sent across the place as cracks appeared all across the ground. The spectators were in awe once again because just last month, both attacks were not as massive, either carried a lot of pressure, causing the kind of effect that was happening now. Boom! As both attacks collided, A destructive ripple spread across the place, blasting both of them backwards as a 30-foot crater was created within the battle ring. Gasp dash. What in the world? Dash. Such destructiveness. Dash. These two are definitely special class material. Too bad only one of them can retain the title. The spectators voiced out with surprised expressions. As they both slammed into opposite sides of the dome, their eyes turned blurry as a buzzing sound rang in their ears. All they could see around them as their eyes cleared up was a cloud of dust and debris scattered all across the place. Fortunately, this time both of them didn't pass out. As the dust settled, they both stood to their feet and slowly began to take steps forward. Their clothing looked quite tattered at this point, and injuries could be seen on multiple parts of their bodies. Hee hee, is that all you got, Greenie? Havrina said with a provocative expression while laughing. There was blood rolling down the side of her head, but she seemed to not be disturbed by that as she moved forward. Glade's right hand vibrated as she tried to raise it up. The immense pain coming from her shoulder area was so crippling. My attack had more effect than hers, but she seems to be in better condition than I am. Is she a monster? Glade had a look of disbelief as she thought. You are finished, Havrina said with a smile, while moving forward as her hair swung from side to side. Glade gritted her teeth and clasped her left shoulder. Here goes, she said internally before raising her hand. Zoom! She suddenly glowed up with red light again. Havrina paused her steps and stared at her with a surprised look. Glade was conjuring the same attack she had used earlier. Hey, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill yourself? Havrina asked. It was common knowledge that completely running out of bloodline energy, and even pushing the limits of a mixed blood body to make use of the reserves that were meant for keeping the body functional could lead to death. Glade disregarded Havrina's words and continued. Currently ill, so I might not be able to upload a second chapter today. Chapter 456. Glade disregarded Havrina's words and continued. In a few moments, it had been created again, and now Havrina stood in place with a look of surprise. Well, looks like you're truly willing to do anything to win, even if it includes dying, hee hee. I like your guts, Greenie, Havrina voiced out. I won't die, Glade responded as her hand trembled. Who says I can't use the same attack twice as well? Havrina voiced out as her hair also began to elongate once again like before. Gasp dash. They're both crazy. The spectators had disbelieving faces as they stared at both of them, activating their most powerful attacks once again. Glad, what are you doing? Angie had a distressed look on her face as she voiced out. However, there was no way Glade would hear her from her sitting position. She could only hope that Glade would be okay. Havrina had a crazy smile on her face as she finished setting up her most powerful attack. Just as she wanted to send it forth, her eyes widened again as Glade began to create another attack identical to the one she had just done. Gasped, the crowd was in shock as 3 more of those cylindrical red-shaped structures appeared. Havrina still couldn't believe her eyes. She shouldn't have enough energy to do that. What's going on? Timmy voiced out from his seating position with a surprised look. Gustav also didn't understand what was happening. Just when everyone thought it was over, another one was created in a matter of moments, bringing them to 5. Glade had now managed to conjure 5 of her most powerful attacks simultaneously. TCH! Bring it on! Although Havrina had no way to counter all these 5 at the same time, she fiercely stood her ground. This ends now, Glade voiced out as she sent all 5 flying towards Havrina at the same time. Fwiwe! Fly high! Fly high! The entire battle ring vibrated as the attacks traveled forward at full speed, carrying immense destructive force. Even the dome was on the verge of collapse due to both of them sending out their most powerful attacks at the same time. Upon the first collision, Havrina's attack was ripped through as she was blasted backwards while her hair reverted back to its usual length. Her eyelids grew heavy as she looked forward and noticed the rest of the attack still heading towards her with full force. I went Eloose. She was struggling to make a move while in midair, but she found herself growing weary as all 4 structures headed for her. Her eyelids finally closed as all attacks were about to hit. Her eyes opened up, and she found herself floating in a green space with a lady with similar features to hers in front of her. Except this lady looked way more mature. Heavy! Heavy! Huh? Mum? How? What did you promise me? Huh? Heavy, what did you promise me? That. I was never gonna accept defeat? Now wake up. Wake up, Heavy! As the last words rang in her ears like a clap of booming thunder, Havrina suddenly opened her eyes before the attacks could slam into her. Thry! Her eyes had a dark violet glow as her hair suddenly glowed an immensely bright light and shot out in every direction. To everyone's surprise, Havrina's hair swept across the place with immense speed and smoothly cleaved every one of the structures in half before stabbing into the ground below and sweeping her upwards. Fweh! As her body bolted across the air, the structures exploded, sending shockwaves across the vicinity and destroying the ground even more. Havrina was unaffected by this as her body swept across the air towards Glade's position. Not only Glade, but everyone was extremely surprised at this point, wondering how she was doing this. Her being was shining forth with indigo light like a divine presence due to her hair covering her figure. Shroom! Her hair shot towards Glade, slamming heavily into her and sending her flying backwards. Havrina's body flew forward and descended on Glade's chest with her feet causing her to spiral downwards and slam into the ground below. Bang! A small cloud of dust was created as Glade's body was pushed several feet into the ground, and she passed out instantly. Havrina stepped away from Glade's unconscious body, and her eyes slowly began to dim down along with her hair. The AI announced her as the winner as the orb above displayed her face. Huh! What happened? Havrina muttered as she looked around and could only see destruction. As she spotted Glade's unconscious body in front of her, she understood what went down. How? These were the last words she muttered before her eyes turned listless, and she passed out as well. What the hell was that? How did she suddenly become so powerful at the last second? It was as if I was in the presence of a powerful being. The spectating cadets felt their eyes were deceiving them. Glade was the first to do something impossible and should have won. But Havrina suddenly went crazy after getting a boost in power and defeated her with ease. The medical team quickly arrived on the stage and began to tend to these two. Matilda and Angie had already moved towards the battle ring area as well. They wanted to be assured of their friend's safety. That wasn't natural, Gustav muttered as he slowly deactivated God Eyes. Glade or Havrina? He asked. Both, Gustav responded with a look of contemplation. And I don't understand how any of them managed to pull this off, Gustav added internally. At the last second, he noticed foreign energy become active within Havrina, but on Glade's side, he didn't even notice anything. Glade would have won if not for this. As this battle came to an end, so did Glade's special class title. Havrina was still recorded as the winner even though she passed out afterwards due to the fact that Glade passed out first. Still sick. Chapter 457. Both of them were in a dangerous state, according to the medical personnel, due to them overstraining and draining their bloodline energies completely. Even though the instructors witnessed the whole thing and understood what was happening, they didn't butt in. This was how the MBO instructors were. So long as the attack would not lead to immediate death, they would never butt in. Everyone began to leave one after the other. Gustav decided to go and check on Glade with the others before leaving. Angie was tearing up as she saw the state of Glade's body. Matilda and Falco consoled her while Gustav just stood there watching as he activated God Eyes again. By nightfall, in a place filled with lush greenery that was dimly lit, 4 figures gathered in front of a 30 feet tall tree. Why did you cancel the operation, Boss Hendrik? One of them asked. You idiots were not being discreet enough about it, Hendrik voiced out with a repulsed tone. I have no idea if Gustav caught up to what I was trying to do. I cannot let these fools jeopardize my plans, Endrick said internally. Hand the serums over to me, Endrick commanded. The three taller silhouettes brought out a cylindrical-shaped object with a pointy tip and handed them over to Endrick, who immediately placed them in his storage device. I will handle things myself, he voiced out after keeping them. In the meantime, I have another job for you three, Endrick added while raising his head to stare at all three of them. We're all ears, boss. Within a modernized-looking pub where robots and half-mechanized humans could be seen moving about the place with a kind of drink or the other in their possession, two people arrived through the entrance. Holographic images could be seen displayed on different corners of sassy-looking dancers moving their waists. Some large bubbles could be seen floating in different areas, and beautiful ladies in revealing clothes were also swerving to the music booming in the background. The two who had just entered were male and female, both clad in fully covering clothes. The lady was clad in a purplish leather bodysuit with ash-colored hair and a half-red mask, while the man was covered in a full black cloak with a mask covering his entire face. Why am I not surprised that he asked to meet here? Such a repulsive atmosphere for a repulsive being, she said to the man with a disgusted tone. Miss, that's my boss, the man said with a low tone. Your boss asked us to meet in a nightclub. How charming, Red Shadow, Miss Amy said with a hint of sarcasm. Well, maybe he's interested in. Before Red Shadow could complete his sentence, Miss Amy interrupted. Interested in death? Yeah, I'd be happy to grant him that if he tries anything stupid, Miss Amy said while walking forward to find a place to seat. Red Shadow subconsciously shivered after hearing the way Miss Amy's tone changed in the last sentence. He quickly followed after her, and they found somewhere to sit at a secluded spot. Whoosh! A puff of smoke suddenly appeared in front of both of them, and transformed into a man wearing a dark suit. He was at least 6'7" in height, and had the body structure of a gorilla. Welcome, young miss, I am Dark Room. Please follow me, Boss VL will see you now, he said while gesturing at them to follow him. Miss Amy and Red Shadow followed the large man to a side of the pub where there seemed to be a dead end. But then, the walls suddenly shifted inside, creating an opening for them to go through. They found themselves in a secluded and luxurious-looking living room where several CCTV projections that displayed different places within the pub could be seen. A man wearing a mechanical helmet with green eyes sat on one side of the sofa, waiting for them. When they arrived, he stood to his feet and greeted Miss Amy with respect while Red Shadow bowed slightly in respect after seeing the man. So, we found the signature energy in Gildian Ruined City like you predicted, but there was nothing else there. No evidence, no leads, nothing. We only wasted time going there. Miss Amy got down to business the instant she took her seat. Well, this is most certainly troubling. This means someone got there before we did, Boss VL said with a disturbed tone. I hope the infected city didn't harm you in any way, Boss VL asked with a concerned tone which was quite surprising to Red Shadow and Dark Room, who was standing in the corner. That is nothing of concern to you, Miss Amy responded with a strong tone. Her personality matches. Just how strong is she to enter the city without any form of protective suit, Boss VL thought after hearing Miss Amy's response. What should be our next step now since we still can't find the creator of the T-67 device? Miss Amy asked with a disturbed tone. We'll have to visit Thorkin Forbidden City. I didn't want us to have to go there, but now we have no choice, Boss VL said with a slightly worried tone. All right, let's go, Miss Amy said while standing up. Right now? Boss VL was taken aback by her immediate decisiveness. What? You think I have time to waste? I need to help my precious student with something. I'd rather be anywhere but here, she said while moving towards the entrance. Red Shadow and Boss VL stared at each other for a few moments before also jumping to their feet and following behind her. Just who is this woman? Dark Room, who stayed behind, wondered as he watched them leave. He had never seen Boss VL so composed before in someone's presence, and Miss Amy was exuding an indomitable and domineering presence that naturally caused everyone to fall in line. I couldn't even sense her bloodline rank. This was another issue he found unsettling, You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.